What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. A story where Naruto is betrayed and banished. But destiny has bigger plans for him. From exile to emperor, this is the journey of power, strategy, and love. Today's fanfic is titled, Which is What If Naruto's Parents Minato and Kushina Came Back to Life Part 1. If you enjoy intense Naruto stories and epic world building, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now sit back, relax, and let the legend begin. The sound of two beeping monitors, in a steady rhythm, was the only thing heard in a white room. All was eerily quite unlike other places. This is due to this being a different than a regular hospital. This was a place even Anbu, seals protected it, never went. It was known only to the Hokage, and any select medical personnel was permitted to enter or give treatment to those within. In grand total, only 2 doctors and 4 nurses know this area. But no one knew they worked more the then Shady Leaf General Hospital. The hours were rough due to the very small staff and having to keep appearance of normal medical career. Currently one of the nurses was coming in to check on the 2 only patents that have been in this small restricted hospital for the past, almost, 8 years. The young nurse came in pushing a cart full of needed material to take care of her 2 charges. But today upon coming in she noticed something different. On of the monitors was beeping at a faster rate commonly asserted with an away patent. Due to the small curtain divider that gave privacy to anyone just coming in the door to the patent. Interested, the nurse moved the cart to the side and went to the divider. Pushing it back, she looked in at the 2 beds pushed together and the hands of the 2 cupped together. Looking further up to the head of the one on the left, she noted her female charge was still asleep. Turning her head to the right, she met confused blue satire eyes still dim with sleep. She gasped, drawing the attention of the now awake male patent. She rushed over, drawing her pen light from her pocket and gently tilting his head, checking his pupil reaction, then proceeded with the other test. Nodding her head, she reached behind his head and activated a seal that was on the wall. The seal flared and the mark on her hip tingled, letting her know it was working. "Can you tell me your name and where you are?" she asked gently. He nodded and opened his mouth only to start coughing. The nurse motioned to wait a moment and left to get the cart. Bringing it over, she opened a chest that contained ice and some small vials in a plastic container. Lifting the plastic containers with the vials up, she reached down and procured a plastic cup and placed a few ice chips in it. Returning to the man, she slightly tilted the bed slowly with a switch, just enough to that he wasn't fully laying down. The man closed his eyes and took a deep breath only to cough again. Due to muscle deterioration from lack of use, he couldn't even cover his mouth. He had a light covering of facial hair, colored sunny blonde, that matched his unruly hair on his head that was slicked back with a hair cloth cover. The nurse brought the ice cup to his mouth and helped get one in his mouth. "Easy now, you haven't eaten or drank anything for a while now," she said gently. The man took a bit and a few more ice chips. She repeated her earlier. "Minato Namikaze and I'm in Sector Silence. Only very few know of this area. Only Ks and VIPs are treated here in emergency cases." He looks around as the nurse nods while checking both the lines of the patents. Then his heart rate picks up again, making the nurse look up to see him looking around. "What's wrong?" she asked, taking his vitals. "My son. My baby boy, where is he?" he asked anxiously, looking around. The nurse dropped his hand and went to the charts at the end of the bed. She flipped a page or 2 before reattaching it to the hook. "There is a note that does confirmed you and her having a child, but when? How? You're not married." She gasps. "Is it a bastard child? Did she trick you? Do you want me to send her to the pits of Anbu?" she shouted, scrawling at the redhead lying next to him. Then before she knew it, she was on the floor gasping for breath and trembling. The killer internet was fast and strong. Visions of her death danced before her eyes, each more gruesome than the last. Then. Now Minato-kun, you mustn't do this in your condition or you may relapse and your son will continue without any parents. Chided a voice from behind the divider. Almost no one but very few people know about your marriage and that it was before you were named Hokage. Nor that the both of you started a family. The voice in person came around the divider. It was the third Hokage, and stepped up to help the poor nurse off the ground. Behind him 5 others appeared wearing medical garb, 3 females 1 male. The key vanished and Minato breathed heavily for a few minutes as one of the doctors, the male, stepped around the third and nurse, scrawling at said nurse. He stepped up to the fourth's side and begun checking him over while the female doctor went to check the still unconscious redhead. Sarutobi whispered a few words to the nurse he had helped out and she nodded and went to stand at the far wall in parade rest head down, ashamed. Sarutobi waited while Minato was checked and calmed down. Namikaze-sama, please tell me the last thing you remember. The male doctor asked. Now done with this basic checkup, he started chakra therapy on his muscles starting with neck and shoulders. One of the new nurses had taken the chart and went to the one against the wall to ask what has been done and any observations made. While the last went to help with the chakra therapy starting at the toes and feet. By this point Minato looked worn out and ready to sleep, but he nodded and cleared his thought. Kushina had gone into labor around midnight on the 9th. I sent a clone to Bawako-sama, our chosen midwife. Then took Kushina to the secured location while using my Anbu mark to inform the Anbu commander of the situation. Anbu were already on site upon arrival and the protection security seal almost finished. Bawako and her team were waiting inside with all medical supplies at the ready. Kushina's labor took hours until she was fully dilated and ready to push. Chuckles blushes with many threats and vivid descriptions on killing and maiming, how to carry them out. Due to the nature, being a Jinchuriki, of the birth, she couldn't have any medication to ease the pain, so by the time she could start pushing she was tired from both fighting the QB and birthing. But finally, around 6 or 7 that evening our boy was born, Chuckles with a healthy set of lungs. Bawako had him sorted quickly and was carrying him over. I wanted to see him, but small laugh, she snubbed me saying, "Mother first," and walked past reminding me of the seal on Kushina. I never sensed him. Minato closed his eyes in grief and frustration. While I was looking at the seal just about to tighten it back up, Bawako-sama and her staff fell to the ground. I believe they died instantly. I am so sorry, Hiruzen-sama. Minato said, looking up at the third only to see a small smile at his late wife's actions to another Hokage, but his eyes were suspiciously shiny. The third gestured in a way to say it was okay and to continue. From then on he spoke of the interaction that made him flash out of the cavern with his child. Then Minato went into how Kyuubi was ripped from his previous jailer and his fight with the masked Uchiha who later flees when Minato broke his hold on the Kyuubi, to finally the fight with the Biju. Then to what he last remembered of the sealing of the Kyuubi and again asking about his son, though never saying the child's name again, only referring to him as his baby boy and little one. At the end of the tale Minato was slipping back into slumber before having been answered about his precious child. The 2 doctors and 4 nurses turned to the third Hokage. Is his son dead? Is that why the child was never written down? Asked the female doctor, looking quite sad about the hero of the village losing his child just after he had been born. Forgetting about the exact words of who he used the sealing, not even thinking about it. No, his son still lives and right under everyone's nose too. Chuckles, he can be a bit of a troublemaker, but most of it is due the unjust treatment he receives, and for a bit of attention whether negative or positive. Sarutobi looked sad at this statement. He was chewing on the end of his unlit pipe in thought. He missed the surprised looks of the medical staff around him. But Lord Hokage, I do not recall any child of the family name Namikaze. Stated the female doctor again. Thinking of the many files she and the male doctor as head of the hospital in main part of the village that mostly dealt with ninja, and the son of a Hokage would fall into their care as well. You have met him actually and frequently. He is often attacked by angry villagers and a few disobedient ninjas. Said the third, internally chuckling at making them try and figure out who it was. After a few moments, the 2 doctors finally figured it out. The female one gasped and went to find a seat, while the male hung his head down and clenched his fist at his side. Compared to the nurses, these 2 doctors were the only one he fully entrusted with the child and knew by their reaction that he had done the right thing. The other medic nins were found not to be trusted, like the one not long after the poor child had been born had attempted to smother the infant with his hand and blame it on a natural cause. After that, the third had taken the child until he was about 8 or 9 months old. Minato-sama used his own child for the sealing, stated the male doctor, and that child has suffered daily due to that, and yet Naruto is still a sweet child. He turned back to Minato and redoubled his efforts to restore him to health, so he may reclaim his son as soon as possible. The female stood and placed her glowing green hands on the female's, Kushina, head. Hokage-sama, we have reported that Kushina-sama has shown signs of waking. As of last week on Wednesday, I will do all I can to help her to awaken again. You two nurses come and start muscle restoration therapy on her, ordered the female doctor as the male waved the third over. The fourth nurses still by the wall pushed off and started to walk to Minato's side. What do you think you're doing? No one requested you and you are still in trouble from before. Return to your position now, snarled the female doctor, glaring at the nurse in question. I am gonna do my job and help the fourth recover. I believe you are wrong. That thing is in no shape or form our greatest hero's son. He was simply there to help her keep the demon contained, and his mind might still be messed up from that demon's chakra. It is toxic after all. I highly doubt he would fall for the foreigner trash. She went to continue towards Minato when a strong hand gripped his shoulder. She looked over and tumbled at what she saw. The third had grabbed her and had fury written on his face. As of this moment you are suspended and will be in Anbu care until it is safe to release you. Your family will be told that you are currently being held until everything is resolved. Once Minato is up and better able to concentrate, he will decide your fate. Insulting a Hokage's family with 2 disrespects, and your actions, in one sitting can range anywhere from extensive prison time or even execution. It is considered treason for mistreating his family. And before you argue, I oversaw their quiet marriage and have full knowledge of their child's conception to birth and current status among the village. The third growled out, gripping her shoulder harder, by the end his killer intent leaking all over as he spoke, only to be pulled back upon ending his speech. He looked and nodded to the other 2 doctors and 3 nurses who were slightly shaken by his ki. The nurse he was holding was pale and shaking fiercely, looking down on the ground. If Hiruzen wasn't holding her, she may have ended up on the floor. I will be back after a bit. Please keep me updated, and if he reawakens before my return, call me and I will come immediately. With that, he escorted the one nurse out and gently shut the door. The doctors continued working, shaking off the tremors of the Hokage's ki with a sigh of relief of being away for that situation. Tension was still high though. Lord Third should leave her to young Naruto for prank practice, stated the male doctor into the silent room. This caused many, much needed, chuckles from everyone else in the room with nods of agreements. Everyone has heard and seen just how creative the child could be when given the opportunity. With a free practice dummy, he would practice until perfection of that one of many pranks. To any who were not biased to what the poor child held, they took note of his talents and effort put into his actions. Few doctors and nurses could be trusted with his care after a few attempts on the child's life. Hokage's office. After dropping off the nurse to an Anbu on the way out and leaving him with a message with Ibiki to not touch her or allow anyone to speak to her, code silence, until further notice, due to having to keep this a complete secret. She would be put in a silence chamber for prisoners that required only select people to question them and listen into their information. Making note to ensure Danzo or Minion didn't speak to her. He headed to his office while thinking that he would like to see how Minato would like to get reacquainted with his son and how he would like to be introduced to the child. But first he had to get Minato up to date with events after his passing, to current events of the now. He did decide that he would take his crystal ball with him in order to give Minato a glimpse of his son only after reporting his failure and the troubles the council has given about Minato's legacy. He only hoped Minato could allow him to make up for his failure. On a side note, he also should bring up Minato's last member of Team Minato, Hatake Kakashi. The boy has a death wish with the way he kept taking S-rank missions, though he frequently checked on Naruto from the shadows, and if gone for longer than a month he would ask for messages, if allowed, to be sent bi-weekly to him just to make sure his sensei's child was safe. From the dark he would protect Naruto as best that he could. Though from time to time he would ask odd questions about the boy. Like if he was a censor or something, because he would pick Kakashi or another Anbu out in their hiding location. But when Naruto was asked about it, he would just shrug and eat or ask for a hug. Hours later he received another pulse from his mark on his hip, but he was in the middle of assigning missions and he couldn't just leave without suspicion falling on him for leaving without any cause. So, he waited it out, and after another hour, a grand total of 5 hours and 5 minutes since he was last there, he started his trek to the hidden med room, keeping his presence hidden and dismissing his Anbu guard. In his hands a small bundle of scrolls, one medium book and a box with his crystal ball in it, all hidden in a ceiling scroll on his arm, and replicas left in his office. Sector protection. Their work continued with light muttering for another 3 hours with small breaks in between. While not very chakra intensive, it was time consuming and load of consideration in order not to accidentally injure the reviving muscles, though it couldn't be a full revive of the lax muscles, otherwise they would not heal right. This was more of a speed up for getting started. Minato and Kushina, once she woke, would be in physical therapy for months to a year afterwards. More hours passed and finally the female doctor cheered happily and started normal procedure of checking a coma-induced patents just reawakening. When Kushina turned he head toward Minato and yawned. Minato then started coughing a bit. "Where am I, Minato?" she whispered in a raspy voice once done coughing. Ice water chips were brought to her and she very weakly reached it and tried to hold it, but the nurse kept a hold. Said nurse instructed her not to chew but to on the piece slowly. After a few minutes, she was questioned like Minato in basic information and to tell her side of the story, which was recorded by the doctor who had already tapped her shoulder upon her getting the ice chips in a cup to her. "Where is Naruto, our son?" Kushina asked scared. "I know you are worried, but you need to know a few things, but first I would like to reawaken Minato-sama and wait for Lord Third to come back and keep everyone on the same page." She looked at the male doctor working on Minato and nodded to him. He placed his hand on Minato's head. Waiting a few minutes for him to come around again. He heard a sniffle and looked over to his left and saw Kushina with tears in her eyes. Without even thinking he forced his body to respond in order to reach over. Remember, the beds are pushed together to make one large one, to her and caress her face softly laying on his side. "Shoo. Love, everything is okay," he whispered to her, not even noticing his audience that had just about 4 females gushing in awes at the interaction between lovers and a smile on the male's face, thinking of his recently married daughter and hoping she had married a man like Minato-sama. Everyone watched as Minato whisper and comfort his wife. The doctors allowed the couple to interact and talk. While they took a much-needed break, one nurse went to get a bit of food for everyone, including light, bland soup for the 2 patents. They would ask after their son repeatedly and not getting much in answers. After a bit the 2 doctors at least agreed to inform them that he was alive after they started to get upset, thinking that he was dead or something of that nature. When asked how they survived, Minato stated he wasn't sure since the Shinigami should have eaten his soul, and Kushina only stated she would only talk once Lord Third arrived. Kushina lightly dosed in Minato's arms before food arrived, and not long after the Third stepped in again. Upon stepping past the divider, he was pleasantly surprised to see the awake couple cuddled down together. Minato with his arms wrapped around his wife and her head just under his chin, one hand running through her hair which was way shorter than before their coma. Minato's beard and mustache had been shaved off at some point in his absence and both looked to have been sponge-bathed as well. The medical staff stood at his entrance and bowed. He waved them off back to resting until needed. The male doctor brought over a plush chair for the 3rd Hokage to sit in, while handing Kushina's statement, and went back to his staff to finish eating and looking over the charts with the rest. Hiruzen sat and cleared his throat. "I know you have many questions and would like to see your son, but first you need to hear everything I have to say before we do anything. First, I would like to inform you it is 2 months short of being 8 years since you have been in a coma, and lots has happened within the village and with the council." Here he paused and saw he had their undivided attention after a few moments for them to wrap their minds around time change. They could see his weariness in his posture and eyes. This worried them. He sat back and put his unlit pipe in his mouth. Started again. He started with the immediate at events after when he went to announce Minato's death after securing his and Kushina's body and having Mud-Blood doppelganger made, and that about his request that Naruto be seen as a hero, along with not announcing his heritage for fear of assassination from Iwa. How some people started treating the Uchiha after someone melting seeing a Sharingan in the Kyuubi's eyes before it was released. Then the reaction of the village and that of the council. The large argument between shinobi and civilian that ended with the third stomping on all attempts of killing their child. He informed them of the Ino Shaka Cho trying to adopt Naruto and the arguments that brought then how both Hyuga and Uchiha tried power plays for a child none had yet to see. How Inuzuka clan head stated she would honor the request and so would the Aburame, for Shibi, though will take no actions to assist nor any ill actions to the child. How Danzo and his two teammates tried making him into a weapon, saying that was what the fourth had meant. It was with a grave heart that Naruto ended up in the orphanage. Then explained that a bit over a year later Orochimaru defected and explained why. Lord Third explained how at age 4 they lost track of Naruto for a year and a half due to the Hyuga incident. He explained the incident that took months to get the situation under control without a war. Only to be found living on the streets by a returning Anbu, code-named Dog, who was just returning from a 2-year mission. Naruto had seen the mask before and knew he would be safe, so when a battle-weary Anbu came into the Hokage tower holding the child, the Hokage and Dog, planned what to do while medics were called. He pointed to the ones behind him, and his injuries treated. He would not speak of what happened or where he was all this time. Naruto had stayed in the tower until they had found him an apartment that not long after became his own building once news spread through the building of their new resident. The boy was threatened continually, stuff thrown in windows and walls inner and outer written on. Naruto could never venture out on October 10th festival dedicated to the attack and sacrifice of the ones lost in said attack. The third Hokage explained events of the village in Naruto's career as a prankster starting at a little over 5 years old, though Anbu could not find and hold him since he always ran and hid surprisingly well, after he started the academy. He went on to other village events non-Naruto related for a bit, covering almost another 2 years up until today's events, including the one nurse, which both Minato and Kushina looked angry about. He mentions how Naruto was starting to outrun his poor Chunin at the current moment with a chuckle. He heard the medical staff chuckle too and mentions of a betting pool, one he even participated in. I know a simple apology will never be enough to say how sorry I am about what has happened to your son, but I will do what I can to make it up to you and to Naruto, for I have lied to him and said you were both dead and he does not know your names. I was gonna reveal it to him when he was older and less likely to spill the beans, so to speak. But once he said that you were his idol, points at Minato, I knew I couldn't do that until I was absolutely sure he could keep it quiet. He does lots of things for attention and I worry he would forget if he thought it would bring him attention. Lord Third had his head hung and his hands folded in his lap, quite insured as he waited for an answer. Sheets rustled, a weight in his lap and arms wrapped around him, his sight filled with red hair. She had shuffled over to him by crossing over Minato. Hiruzen was like a second father after she had come here to Kohan. Listen, old man, she said lovingly, looking back at Minato. Both Minato and I agree you have done all you could with being pulled out of retirement and sacrificing coming out of retirement in order to protect our son. She put a finger to his mouth when he went to protest. You may not have said it, but we both know you are tired after holding office for so long. You rolled with everything thrown at you. Yes, we are sad and upset about what has happened to our son, but we know you did what you could while protecting him. Now I see your crystal ball box and I must see our son. Kushina demanded. Hiruzen nodded with a chuckle and a subtly wipe at his eyes. The two doctors helped Kushina back into the bed since sliding down was easier than trying to climb up in her current condition, though they were amazed with the amount of movement not only she displayed but Minato's as well. Lord Third brought out his crystal ball and set it up so both Minato and Kushina could see the ran through a series of hand seals, then waved his hand over the top of the ball. The ball glowed for a minute as flashes signified it, looking at light speed for what the casters wished to be found. It cleared to show a classroom setting and a young blonde boy with sleepy blue eyes and his cheek leaning heavily on a hand. Kushina chuckled, and grabbed Minto's hand, at the sheer boredom on her child's face. Minato couldn't pull his eyes off his son's face. The fact that his son was falling asleep didn't matter to him at that moment. After watching their son for a few moments as he fell asleep, they started to notice somethings about him. Even Sarutobi had an odd look on his face. I just thought of this, but it's been 2 or 3 months since I have seen him and he looks a bit thin and tired. He chewed on his pipe, thinking about why that might be. Maybe. No, I did tell my new secretary he was allowed in anytime for any reason, unless she is disobeying, but then my Anbu guards should have seen this and informed me of this happening. I will be looking into it. The last time Naruto was around me was when he pranked me by putting bubble solution in my pipe and I was blowing bubbles in an important meeting with the daimyo. Chuckles all around. The daimyo was confused when instead of smoke I had bubbles. He thought it was me trying to cut back. When I explained who must have done it, we had quite the laugh, and I do believe the meeting went smoother after that. Sarutobi had a smile on his face when he spoke about it. But he did show concern about not remembering not seeing him for so long between the renegotiations with Kumo and the Chunin exams which he had to attend in Suna later this month. He had just gotten the list of who had made the 3rd exam. Only 4 out of the 12 are from Konoha. One of them was Hana Inuzuka was one of them, and he had sent word to his mother and brother. He should have word whether or not they were go with his envoy. Redirecting his attention to the crystal ball, he took in the boy's looks, really studying him. Naruto seemed tired and a bit sour sitting there his seat, but the most noticeable was how thin he was. The child that was 50 pounds last time he saw him now looked more like 30, maybe even less. Which was scary because Naruto was already a bit thin by at least 5 to 8 pounds. Mostly due to his ramen diet and not really being able to get all he could from the stores when he did go grocery store. No matter what Sarutobi did, he had a hard time getting stores and civilians to accept allowing Naruto into their stores and giving a fair price. Though when he could spare someone, mostly an Anbu or trusted Junin, to follow Naruto if he said he had to shop for something and document the shop and amount along with items purchased. The doctors at the small table going over the past 8 years as a review of what they may have to bring to the attention of the 2 patents that have just awoken and figure out the odd anomaly of why the patents are recovering a bit faster than typical of cases similar to theirs. There was one thing they had to bring up and the news was not good. Lord Third, we have an issue we would like to discuss with the Namikazes, please. The male doctor says while standing up after letting the 2 parents watch their child from the crystal ball for a while. The third nodded his head and shut the crystal ball off, much to the parents' sorrow. They turned their heads to the male doctor with full attention on him. First, let me introduce my staff. My name is Ando Jiro, just call me Jiro. My partner is Dr. Mizumaki Kaide and our nurses are Kasumi, Izumi and Hoshi. The other one that's not here is named Naomi. It is our honor to be attending you both. First, we have some questions to you both. I know that the Uzumaki were known for being fast recovers and long-lived, but the damage you both received was extreme. By all accounts you should have died that night, but a strange chakra like the Kyuubi is in both your systems. Do either of you know what this similar chakra is, because everyone knows that the Kyuubi was sealed within Naruto-sama? Inquired Dr. Jiro. Minato turned to his wife briefly, to which she patted his shoulder, then looked at the audience in front of the bed. Leaning closer to rest against Minato a bit, she thought for a moment on how she was going to explain how this happened. When the Shinigami went to take Minato's soul, I attached mine to Minato's. Thus, voiding the contract with the Shinigami, and Minato's soul was released. Though I don't think Shinigami thought we would live with our injuries. Even now I can feel his eyes on Minato. I will have to go to the shrine and maybe see if we can work something out so when we do pass, me and Minato can be together instead of separate. Kushina pauses to think, placing her right hand index finger to her chin and tilting her head to think. As for Kyuubi being in both of us, well, due to me being a past Jinchuriki and bonding my soul to Minato, who took the yin half of the Kyuubi and sealed the yang half in Naru-chan. I modified your seal, Minato, so we both have the healing effect that the Kyuubi's chakra has. Since Uzumakis are trained from a young age how to write with their chakra, it was easy to change it. Kushina says casually, thinking nothing of it. Minato mentally sweat drips at the idea but remembers the lessons she gave him. Though she rarely uses fuinjutsu, she really was a brilliant master at it when needed. She was more into kenjutsu than anything, women and sharp pointy things, shudders. Simply amazing, Kushi-chan, all that in a matter of moments, said the Sandaime Hokage, amazed at the talent he didn't know she had. Naruto got his personality mostly from Kushina and hardly passed his classes. He wrote down some notes on his scroll with her previous statement on what happened from her view. I'm so thankful I have a brilliant, loving, strong wife. I'm so happy I don't have to go on without you. Naruto is so lucky to have you, and I'm not worthy enough. Minato says as he brings her close and slowly kisses her cheek and works his way down her neck. She started giggling and the two started whispering sweetnesses to each other, making the people around them blush as it starts getting heaver in their play petting. The Sandaime cleared his throat to politely interrupt the lovers, only to have to try a few more times before the blushing couple partly separated. Yes, well, now that some of the medical stuff is cleared, is there anything else medical needed before we can plot returning Minato's and Kushina's return to the living? Along with getting both Naruto and Kakashi reunited as well, stated the Sandaime Hokage. Yes, there is one more matter, one that is not good news. Lady Kushina, Lord Minato, due to the injuries sustained and the afterbirth not being properly taken care of, you will not be able to have any more children. The womb was removed that night and Lady Kushina will have to be on medication from now on. My condolences on this troubling news, stated Dr. Kaide with her head bowed along with the other medical staff present. The Sandaime lowered his head in sadness for the news, remembering the both saying they were Goanna have a large family. Minato tightened his grasp on Kushina as she started to tremble. The trembling became heaving cries and he turned and fully embraced her and allowed her to cry. His tears visible to all others as he rested his head on her shoulder. The room fell quiet with the exception of cries of chances and dreams lost. The tears dried after a while with Minato mentioning Naruto and that they still had him to care for. It became a focus for her. Sarutobi brought out his crystal ball and showed her Naruto, which she watched over Minato's shoulder as he held her. She then noticed that her own shoulder was wet as she slowly calmed down. She pulled back from Minato and directed his sight to Naruto, who was currently at a playground with what could only be Nara and Akamichi. They were on the geodesic dome, sitting and balancing on the mid to top areas, eating chips, that more than likely came from the young Akamichi, looking up at the sky. The two watched for a bit as the day got longer and then a heartbreaking scene took place. Shikaku Nara arrived and called the two boys that were with Naruto over and grabbed both their hands and walked off. You could see little Naruto clenching his hands as he watched the three walk off with the young Nara boy trying to get his hand out of his father's hand. Even the medical staff started sniffling after seeing the want to hold a parent's hand like that even for just a little bit. They walked back over to the table they were at previously after being waved away by the Sandaime. I believe it is time to discuss how we will reintroduce you to your son in the village, says the Sandaime, gently placing the glowing crystal ball down. Yes, but first I need 2 scrolls. I need to get a message out to my parents, that is if they are still alive. Minato looks at Sarutobi, who nods. If we're giving Naruto back a family, then we'll make sure the whole family is back. I cannot allow the lies that we're told to continue anymore. Minato growls out. Kushina gently lays her head on his shoulder and half hugs Minato. He told Kushina about his findings after becoming Hokage. He couldn't believe his findings and talked about everything, in the end just letting it go, for that time. But she agreed Naruto will need every family member he could get in order for him to be safe once they came back. If this would be her only child she would ever be blessed with, then every resource would be used in order for him to survive a ninja way of life. Sandaime reached for the storage scroll he had brought. He had packed a bit extra in case there was an issue like this. He unrolled the scroll until he got to a seal that had the words office supplies under it and unsealed it. A large stack of scrolls and ink supplies popped out of the seal. Handing Minato a blank scroll and prepping the ink for use as Minato picked up a brush and did practice a few strokes without ink in order to not mess up too bad. Once the ink was placed on a sliding table and moved it to him. Kushina lightly leaned against him as he worked reading what he wrote and giggling at the fox-like way he was going about making his run mother come back to the village. Sandaime was curious as to what was being written but was busy prepping his seal in order to have it sealed correctly. The Sandaime did not want to make it obvious that the Yondaime was back yet in order to keep these two safe. Minato then started a second scroll and he chuckled to himself as he wrote it. Once making sure the first one was dry, he rolled it up and had Sarutobi place his seal on it while he dried the second one, never once letting Sarutobi read any of it. They were stored in the third's robes for mail later. And the other supplies set aside. Sarutobi looked to Dr. Jiro, who walked over as the last scroll was sealed. Hiruzen waved the doctors back over from their table. Jiro answered the summons. "Anything else you have for us?" asked Hiruzen, looking at Jiro. "We have a few things before you start your planning for reintroductions of parents and child." Jiro turned to the two on the bed. "Until further notice, you will be requested not to use chakra. Your chakra coils have not been used in any other way other than year 1 of an academy student. So we must start there and work back up to Junin level chakra usage. This, along with physical therapy, will be needed. By Kaide and I's calculation, Minato, you will be ready by your son's birthday. Kushina, you will be a bit longer due to the stress of giving birth and battle wounds received. She won't be walking for another 3 months after Naruto's birthday. I think Naruto would love having his parents back on his birthday, don't you?" asked Jiro, reading off the clipboard, with a smile on his face, in his hands and bowing after the report. Minato thought about it. If he was back by that time frame, he, and hopefully his parents, would be able to make sure both his wife and child were safe. By Sarutobi's information earlier about the area attacked by the Nine Tails, they no longer had a house. That would need to be fixed if they started up a house design now, and if he could have Sarutobi lend money for it until their account was back up. Minato picked up a scroll and started drawing floor plans and measurements he wanted, Kushina whispering ideas in his ear from time to time and him adding it in the side notes. Everyone watched in, quite waiting for them to do or say something else, but just watching the loving interaction. With a few questions on what Naruto might like. Things like color, orange, anything about his current liking, place he would love to still have, his balcony with hammock and plants. Hiruzen-sama, we will need you to help us until our accounts are up and we are ready to go out. For now, if we are to have a place ready for Naruto to live with his family, we will need to replace our house. The sooner it is started the better, and it will need to be made rush order, but the money. Hiruzen, either we will have to risk exposure or we will have to borrow from you until we can get to our account returned. We will pay you back upon getting our account back if you help, Minato said, looking up. I will have it started first thing in the morning, and the carpenters along with a special Anbu will be on this. It should be done quicker. You remember Tenzo, correct? He has grown a lot since you last seen him. Hiruzen said. Minato smiled and nodded, glad to hear that this would not be an issue, then turned back to his floor plans, and hearing the one little boy has grown up and still alive. Now as for our plans regarding Naruto, Minato said, picking up another scroll while smiling, setting aside the floor plans for now. Next morning, the Hyugas were disturbed by the sound of a lot of equipment moving past their walls and down the road to an empty lot of 10 acers. Many genin, with their senseis, and few chunin were walking together, carrying equipment, talking about the orders they were called in early by the Hokage to begin for an important client. Words overheard were about rich and royal, along with whispers of a long deadline refund. One Anbu appeared in front of the Hyuga guards with a scroll for the clan head. One guard took the scroll and went inside as the Anbu disappeared. A knock was heard within the main branch's dining room, interrupting the early meal. The person knocking was called in and upon entering bowed and made his way to the clan head, then left to return to his post. This person was Hyuga Hiyashi, elder twin brother and clan head for the last 11 years. Hiyashi pried open the seal after seeing it was from the Hokage, Then read it over the Hyuga elders looking up from their meals waiting for news of what was within the letter. Lord Hokage is just informing and apologizing in advance for any noise and disturbance we may endure for the next month and 2 weeks. This building project is in the 10-acre lot near here, may incur on our daily lives. He also states that the noise will be between the hours of 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. in order to not infringe too much on our lives, and we will know who our neighbors are only once they arrive. They have paid for privacy. Lord Hokage is also requesting that we do not use our dojutsu to see the floor layout, and that seals for their privacy will be placed once everything is built and we will no longer have to worry about this temporary blind spot in our defense. Anbu will be placed outside our perimeter until the seals are done, says Hiyashi, rolling the scroll up and putting it in his sleeve. The elders murmur amongst themselves for a few minutes, nodding at the thought of having a new and potentially powerful new neighbor. Already they were making plans, since it seemed this clan had money, for either getting them on their side versus the cursed Uchiha's side. Hinata, 7 years, and Hanabi, 2 years, ate their meal only looking up once in a while. A branch member was helping little Hanabi with hers and made sure her head was further down than usually at this announcement. Hinata looked at the time and saw it was time to leave before her guard came to collect her for school. Politely asking her father for permission to leave the table and leaving with a bow to him and the elders. It seemed to her the news would be causing many problems for the household. Many branch members were about to be worked to the extreme in order to re-clean an already clean house. The branch members would needlessly have their caged bird seal activated, and the mere thought just about made Hinata cry, but she knew if she did the elders would have her father punish her. As much as everyone thinks her father a cruel man, he was not, but he couldn't show that to anyone outside of their family rooms. Like many main branch members, the seals had privacy seals in order to protect modesty. That was something her kidnapper took advantage of 3 years ago. Hinata shuddered at the thought. Hinata entered her room and grabbed her large sweat coat with the Hyuga emblem on the shoulders and pulled it on. Then grabbed her backpack that was by the bedroom door, already packed, since she completed her homework last night. She put it on and stepped out and saw Ko already waiting for her like every day, whether school or planned outing. Ko was one of her friends and knew just about everything. Only one thing she kept to herself, about her crush on an outsider boy named Uzumaki Naruto. A taboo in the Hyuga clan unless they had something the Hyuga wanted or absolutely necessary, to prevent too much inbreeding too much. Both Ko and Hinata walked to the school, though this time having to stay more to the side as they saw many people carrying different tools and materials needed to begin the building process, and many boxes and carts carrying out overgrowth, cut trees, and rocks out of the way. Hinata saw some Chunin using earth jutsu to level the area out before remembering that they were not allowed to look. Large construction view blockers were just starting to be set up around the area being worked on. The border seemed to just leave the legal amount of space between their land and the Hyuga land. Thoughts of the new family moving in near her occupied her mind the entire way to school. Before she knew it, they were there. Ko bid her farewell and a reminder to do well in school before he took his leave. The school doors would not be unlocked for another 5 minutes, so Hinata went to the tree with a swing her crush normally sat in after school if he stayed until the end. Standing near the tree, she heard a noise. Someone grunting and then a soft thud, coming from the back of the school where the sparring ring and practice fields were. Hinata walked to the corner that lead around the school and peeked over, only to gasp at the sight. It was Naruto and Shibi-sensei. Hinata did not like this sensei. He was always making things hard for Naruto. If someone sneezed, he was thrown out or had to stand in corner either holding water buckets at shoulder height or standing on his head for the whole class. Some students went out of their way to make his life hard, and it's due to all the whispers she heard all over the village no matter where Naruto went. Well, everywhere but one place, Ichiraku's ramen shop. They were friendly to Naruto. Get up, Naruto. You're too slow. Grunt thud. Dead again. Get up, shouted Shibi-sensei as Naruto tried getting up again and was kicked well beyond force required for teaching. Naruto-kun couldn't see it, but their sensei was smiling as he watched his small student try and get up. It looked like they have been here for a while now to Hinata. Naruto was known for his stamina and resilience, so for him to be struggling then that meant for at least 2 hours of this teaching method. Naruto was coughing and gasping for breath and Hinata saw blood mixed in with the spit coming out of Naruto's mouth. Hinata worried stepped out of the shadows and approached as she predicted. The teacher stopped what he was doing. He looked at Hinata then at the position of the sun. Good morning Hyuga-sama, you're early this morning. Naruto, go clean up, we'll continue training later. Come Hyuga-sama, I can open the doors for you. Shibi walked past Hinata and went to open the main doors. Hinata held back and looked at Naruto while fidgeting with her fingers not meeting his eyes as he got up. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Asked Hinata with a stutter. She looked at him shyly and noticed the bright smile he flashed her when he finally stood up. I'm good, what was your name? Naruto asked, scratching the back of his head, embarrassed for not remembering her name. Sorry, but I usually don't have anyone talk to me, so I don't remember names well. But I do remember you are in my class, you're always turning red, it's weird. Naruto rubbing the back of his head while squinting his eyes. Hinata froze at the word weird and hung her head. My name is Hyuga Hinata. Hinata squeaked at the end then fainted. Naruto freaked out and tried waking the girl, but nothing seemed to work, so he picked her up and ran inside, hoping the nurse was in already. This was one of the few med nins Hokage Gigi approved for treating him, so he knew he would be safe to bring her in as long as he dodges the teachers, that is. Thankfully his luck held out and he didn't get in trouble at all for either holding an unconscious girl or for running in the halls. Entering the ward set up for students, Naruto placed Hinata on the first available bed and turned to see the nurse getting up from her desk. What happened, Naruto-chan? Nurse Izumi as she looked over the Hyuga heiress. Nothing seemed wrong with her, just a bit of dirt, though looking at Naruto he was covered in it, so it could have come from him. We were talking and then she got all red and passed out. I have no idea why, maybe she's sick. Will she be okay? Naruto spoke rapidly. The nurse thought about it and then remembered the rumor going around by the students and staff, then chuckled. Making a mental note to mention this to Kushina and Minato, she's one of the nurses in on the secret. Yes, I do believe she will be just fine. Now let me get a look at you. You look like someone threw you to the ground repeatedly. I see a number of bruises on your face and neck and even your hands. She pulled Naruto to the second bed and gestured for him to remove his shirt. He hasn't found the jumpsuit yet. Naruto was hesitant about removing his shirt, but reluctantly he removed it, only to hear a light gasp and the divider being pulled around his bed. Naruto-chan, how often do you eat? And what does your diet consist of? Also, when was the last time you had a haircut, Naruto-chan? Nurse Izumi asked as she runs her mystic palm over his bruised and thin body. You could count his ribs and his hips were just starting to show. Bruises started to fade with her help and the cubies, not that young Naruto knew. As for Naruto's hair, it was just past his shoulders and as messy as ever. His bangs were swept to the side and tucked behind his ear. Izumi got up and went to her mini fridge as she listened to Naruto list the many ramen flavors he eats, but avoiding listing the last time he ate. She pulled out the large bowl of soup and a 6-inch ham and cheese sub and a bottle of apple juice. It was gonna be her lunch, but she knew Naruto would benefit more from it. Heating the soup in the microwave, she got a try out and set everything up. In her mind she was half hoping Naruto's parents were watching and half hoping they were. She turned to Naruto and wondered why he was thin if he ate that fading food like he said he was. Naruto-chan, when was the last time you shopped or went to Ichiraku's? She asked and Naruto went silent, which is worrisome. She looked in the small opening and saw his eyes shadowed. It's not that I don't want to shop, but the store I used to go to changed hands and now I don't know where I can shop. It's like the others in the fact I hadn't even pranked them and I'm still treated bad, I still don't know why. But I've been thinking maybe it's not me but maybe, my parents that did something. I mean the old man lies about not knowing them, I know he does, I can feel it. But I think he's doing that because he's trying to protect me, so I can't be mad at my Gigi. As for my hair, I just kind of let it go, I don't want to cut it yet. Naruto said, still not looking up at the nurse who came back with the tray and all the food. She handed it to Naruto, but he didn't eat it. Izumi-sensei, I can't eat your food. What will you have for lunch? Asked Naruto. Well, I was thinking of going with you to a restaurant owned by an Akamichi and taking you with me. How does that sound? Izumi asked. Naruto looked up in surprise at the offer but didn't think he would be allowed to enter the establishment. Sure, Choji was a nice kid, but he had never met Choji's parents. He wasn't sure that Choji had even mentioned him to his parents. After all, the boy was still allowed to play with him. Naruto-chan, I don't think your parents were bad people. I don't remember anyone other than Orochimaru being a corrupt ninja within the last 20 years, and you're only 8, so the likelihood of you being from a bad family is very unlikely. Now what makes you think that the Hokage is lying to you? Izumi asked, curious about how Naruto deduced that. Naruto put the spoon down and tilted his head while squinting his eyes. His eyes? I can see that it hurts and he seems to age whenever I asked, so I stopped asking. But that's okay, when I'm Hokage I can find all the answers I want. That's also why I can't blame Hokage Gigi. I think it hurts him just about as much as it hurts me, only worse because he knows. Naruto now had his face downcasted with his hair covering his eyes. Izumi was amazed that this little boy who is ignored and mistreated could be so insightful. Though this was not the first time that this has happened, anyone who really works with this young boy finds out that the hyperactive boy was only a small part of this child. The other nurses and doctors that have worked with him all said the same thing. Though now that Izumi thinks of it, everyone but the one nurse, Naomi, the one in prison, rarely interacted with him. Many times, Naomi would have to change shifts or would leave Naruto in a hospital room untreated and unattended for hours before someone was told that he was there. Izumi wondered why it was only now that she recalled all this. Naomi was always a pleasant woman to be around. She would have to bring that up with the Sandaime when she next saw him. Naruto had gone back to eating and finished just as his first bell rang. Naruto looked up with worry to the nurse, knowing he was going to be in trouble again. Today they were supposed to unlock their chakra. He really wanted to go and not get kicked out. But knowing Shibi-sensei, he would take advantage of his being late and kick him out, even with a note from Izumi-sensei. He voiced this concern to the nurse, who told him to wait, and she left her office motioning for Naruto to stay. Naruto got bored and went back over to Hinata to see if she would wake, even if it was less than a minute since Izumi. He sat in the provided chair and crossed his arms, not really looking at anything. 3 minutes passed by and Hinata softly moaned, then moved a bit only to slowly open her eyes and sighed. Naruto heard and saw this but waited for Hinata to gather herself. He knew he hated people being near him when he was vulnerable while laying down. It was one of the reasons why he hates the hospital. So many people coming and going when you just laid there. They would hover over you and poke you and even stab you with long and large needles. How can anyone do that to an innocent person? It was a violation of your person. Naruto shook his head of those thoughts, already feeling goosebumps building on his body at those thoughts. He returned his thoughts to Hinata as he observed her without being obtrusive. She was always quiet and shy, never really talking to the other girls and only a few boys like Kiba and the boy with the bugs. He forgot that boy's name again. Not Naruto's fault. Bug Boy was even worse than Hinata. No one even really knew what his face looked like. Bug Boy at least interacted more than Hinata with other students. Hey Hinata, you feeling better? Naruto asked, only for the girl to whip her head to him, her lavender eyes going wide and her face going red again. Naruto panicked again as she fainted again. At least she was on a bed this time. Naruto was in such a panic they didn't notice Izumi step inside with one more person, having just seen what happened. Goanna have to have a talk with this young lady, thought Izumi with a smile, and maybe Naruto's parents as well. Izumi shook her head, still smiling softly, and went up to Naruto, placing her hand on his shoulder to calm him. Naruto-chan, I have someone here that will make sure you can stay in class and will be making sure you're not kicked out unfairly anymore. This is Anbu Inu and he will be in your class from now on until the Hokage can find a better solution. You are to turn over your homework and test to him before and after completion. Izumi said, waving to a tall figure dressed in standard Anbu armor and a snarling dog mask. Silver hair stood out on the Anbu's head. He was familiar to Naruto, but he couldn't recall why. Oh, well, it would come to him later while he was working out or something. He could think clearer while doing something. The Anbu named Inu stepped forward and motioned to Naruto to follow him, then Inu turned around and walked back out the door. Naruto turned back to Izumi to explain about Hinata, but was only lightly shoved toward the door. Go Naruto, I saw what happened right after you asked her if she was feeling okay. I'll fix her right up, though I ask you give her a bit of room when you meet her next and only touch her when she okay with it. And no, it's not you, it's something with her heart and mind that causes it. Izumi says with a laugh and again lightly pushes him to the door. You'll understand when you are older, just be nice to her and let her get used to your presence, and please be a bit calmer around her until she stops fainting. With that, Izumi shuts the door behind him after finally managing to get him through the door. She sighed, thinking of the conversation she had a bit ago with the Hokage. Flashback. Izumi left the ward at a walk at first, but once she was past the classes and then begun to lightly run up to the Hokage's office. Once there, she bypassed the secretary and the two guards, Anbu, in front of the two large doors. She knocked on the door just in case the Hokage was busy with another person. Upon hearing permission to enter, she went in swiftly and shut the door. Hokage-sama code BFB, blonde fox boy, her personal code so others don't realize what they are talking about, the same thing. Her endearment to Naruto. Privacy required. Sarutobi stopped the work on the paper in front of him and placed his hand on the bottom left side of the first drawer he had drawn open and channeled chakra into the seal he had there. It is safe to speak now, Izumi-chan, please tell me what is wrong with Naruto and so early this morning. Did you already manage to get a look at his weight? Asked the Sandaime while stuffing his pipe he had picked up while talking. Lord Hokage, there is more than that to speak of, but I must make it quick. First, you were correct, his weight is very poor. It does not seem to have affected his as much as it should, but we must up his calories and lower his physical activity for a while to build it back up. Second, I believe that one of the teachers is abusing him under the disguise of extra training. He came in with a little over 78% of surface bruising and 12% internal bruising. Also a few past injuries that were never cared for. I'll put in a report for you later. He will have to be admitted to the hospital to fix those. Third, again, the teachers are finding unfair reasons to kick him out and not giving him a fair chance at an education. Please, we can't let this continue. He was getting quite upset at the idea of not being allowed to unlock his chakra today. Izumi said, looking stressed. Sarutobi pressed his tattoo and sent a message out in Morse code made by Anbu commander. Within moments, an Anbu with a snarling dog for a mask appeared and was kneeling in front of the Hokage's desk awaiting his orders. This is Inu. He will be with Naruto until further notice during class and hidden nearby after class. He will observe today and only interfere when he is in danger of being hurt. Inu, there is claim of unfair treatment in class again. You are to sit or stand in class, visibly, and monitor Naruto until further notice. After the last bell rings, pretend to leave, deceive the teachers into believing you do not want to be tasked with this. Observe any interaction with Naruto-kun has with any teaching staff. There is reports of false training causing injury to Naruto-kun. Also, watch the paperwork handed to him, only collect them after he receives them. I have a feeling they are messing with his work. Do not make it obvious you have taken it. Go with Izumi-chan to pick him up, said the Sandaime. It was obvious that he was becoming frustrated with having to correct this time and again. Izumi chuckled to herself as she remembered the one thing the child called out the Hokage on. You know, Naruto told me he knows you're lying about his parents, though misunderstood why you won't tell him. He says your eyes give it away, along with noticing the pain it caused you when he asked. Izumi said, noticing the soft smile the Hokage had around his pipe and that the hat hung a little lower over his eyes. Is that so? Naruto, you really are something else, says the Sandaime softly, shooing them on. I believe you have a young man in your ward unattended. End of flashback. Izumi looked at her one patient and sighed, then walked up to her desk to start her report for the Hokage about what she could find while she was healing Naruto's bruises. She was saddened by her finds and really didn't want to be the bearer of bad news to a family not even reunited yet. Hopefully she can help them and maybe get them involved without the child knowing about them yet. Maybe I can talk to Kushina-sama and help her make Naruto-chan lunches and other meals for him to take with him for the day, thought Izumi as she continued making her report, waiting for Hinata to wake up so she could talk to her, another thing to talk to Kushina-sama about. Jotting down her notes of what to bring up, but not to who, and completing her report of what she could find in the quick once-over on Naruto that she could find. Sector protection. Minato and Kushina were up early and requested Jiro to use the crystal ball so they might be able to watch Naruto for a bit. The doctors were already taught how to work the crystal after Minato and Kushina fell asleep when they finished plotting with the Sandaime the night before, well, more like early morning. Jiro and Kaide agreed to take turns with the hospital work and the sector work by rotation of every 3 days. They would work on and off again with the nurses trading in and out daily, only Izumi was asked to come every day after working in the school ward. Minato and Kushina had asked her if she would spy on Naruto for them since they would only be able to watch the crystal ball once in a while. Jiro worked the crystal and had it contain enough chakra so they were able to watch Naruto wake and do his daily routine before leaving very early to meet up with a sensei. After 2 minutes, it was obvious what was happening. This was abuse. Not once did this extra lesson have the teacher do anything but the child being hit, kicked, and thrown to the ground, never correcting Naruto's abysmal stance or balancing issues. Minato wasn't even sure what style Naruto was even trying to use. It wasn't the basic curriculum style taught to the whole class and mandated by the school to be the only one used, so it was fair for all in the class and to allow clan children more than just clan taijutsu. It took both Minato and Jiro holding down Kushina from crawling out of the bed and room to her son's defense. Only once Minato promised a painful lesson, with embarrassment, to be taught to the teacher and allowing her to have a few minutes alone time with him before he was shipped off to prison. Currently Kushina had a spinal brace. From her neck to her hips she could not move more than a wiggle of arms and legs. It really was hard for her to stand or walk, yet let alone sit up without pillows or special backing. The only reason she could get to Sarutobi before was because of her will to comfort her second father figure and being able to pull and lift herself with her arms mostly. She would require surgery that neither Jiro or Kaide wanted to do without another doctor, so they were forced to wait until Tsunade-sama came, as they were told that she would be coming back, though that was hard to believe. All the medics knew after Dan died and she was permitted to leave 2 months after the Kyuubi incident, but she was a hermit those 2 months. She wouldn't even treat patients during that time. What Minato never said was there was another reason she left, though only the Sandaime, Minato, and Kushina knew why. Though both Kushina and Minato both forgave the Sandaime, Minato could help but mentally chuckle at how he was gonna get Tsunade back into the village. He couldn't wait for the drama to start, only Kushina was more eager than him. He almost felt sorry for Sarutobi, almost. Throughout the day they would watch, on and off again, Naruto and his new guard, someone they were happy to see was still alive. Minato would do physical workouts, while Kushina would read aloud different village reports when no nurses were in the room or area, since only the doctors were currently approved for these reports due to circumstances. When Minato had downtime he would read the reports while Kushina would work on her calligraphy or nap. When Minato wanted to take breaks he too would join Kushina in his calligraphy or a nap with her cuddling into her since she couldn't move. Both would put anything aside and talk with Jiro when meals were provided. The talks would be either about Naruto or something about one of the reports, even going so far as to get the good doctor's impression of the village as it is now. They found out from Jiro that many new genin really didn't seem to be as well off once they left the academy as they used to be. Upon hearing that, Minato looked at a file labeled Academy only to find that somehow the civilian council had gained of the school before Sarutobi was reinstated as Hokage. There was a paper that got the daimyo's signature. Hopefully the letter Minato and Sarutobi made and sent via summons would be answered immediately responded to. He wanted to speak to the daimyo very much, and this find was another reason he pulled out the documents and wrote some notes about the issue and made a separate note to make a new format for the school to start. Unfortunately, that would also mean a number of students may just be held back by a year or two in order to fix this and make it so they were just getting young kids killed or destroying the village's reputation. Many would be enraged, but Minato was going to push to be reinstated as Hokage in order to protect the village and his family from any threat that may come. Kushina was helping when she was bored by looking over the current curriculum and making changes. Since this wasn't a time of war but would always have to be flexible if that changed. Currently most of the grade consisted of book work knowledge and not much hands-on or physical work. Matter of fact, the most physical requirement was throwing of only kuni and throwing stars in taijutsu, not even restriction on academy-only style. This made it unfair for non-clan students, and made the non-clan not learn as well on how to react to things so they could spot what an opening was or not. Things had to change and fast or soon they would lose customers and appear to be weak, allowing them to be attacked. The day passed in that manner until the late evening when the Hokage and Izumi were able to leave. They both came in and answered any questions Minato and Kushina had, along with exchanging plans and ideas as to what they would do to start fixing things. First, Kushina asked for food preparation items for making sandwiches and special dressings for them. Also, she made plans on making food on a small portal stove that would be bought in later and set up for her to use to make meals for Naruto. They agreed that the limit on his physical activity would have to wait until they were able to be reunited and him better watched. A better medical check would also happen then, along with the major medical needs that would make Naruto stay in the hospital, for none were currently life-threatening. This would also allow the parents to baby Naruto a bit too. Second, every day the Anbu guard, Inu, would be made to deliver the 3 prepped meals that would be sealed into a scroll. 3 meals and snacks would be made daily, along with being the boy's bodyguard. Also, it was agreed that Inu would be brought into the secret and plans. Minato also admitted that he was too nervous to ask about his old student. He remembered how depressed Kakashi-kun was before their supposed death and was afraid to ask about him. Minato was embarrassed until he heard from the Sandaime that Kakashi has been on suicide missions one after another and only just this week been made to step back for a bit and relax. Kakashi's assignment was a blessing yet a curse, and being allowed into this secret would really help Sarutobi sleep at night. He feared that making him be around Naruto for a while would be the last straw for the young adult. Though Kakashi's current literature might help just get him killed with Kushina and maybe Minato, along with himself, for introducing it to the poor kid, and Jiraiya for writing it. A shopping list was made and Izumi left to retrieve the items requested. She took a scroll to seal the heavy items into portable camping stove, a fridge, all the ingredients and spices along with containers for them. Money was provided by the Hokage, who unsealed money from a scroll he has for emergencies. Sarutobi left once it was near 10 p.m., as that was more than likely when Kakashi would leave Naruto, as Naruto would not be out after the sun started setting, a lesson he learned after running into some drunks one night. He would bring Kakashi back with him and have the verbal report done her, then show him Minato and Kushina. Minato fidgeted waiting for the young man that was like a baby brother to him, since Hatake Tsukumo was one of the people that helped make Minato the man he was today. Whenever Jiraiya had to leave to do a higher level mission or attend to his spy network, Tsukumo-sensei would work with his team. Minato wasn't really around when Kakashi was born or growing up until he became Minato's student. That was a bit before Tsukumo killed himself. After that happened, Kakashi lived with Minato until Kushina moved in. Kakashi didn't want to intrude, no matter what Minato and Kushina said, though every day Kushina made Kakashi come over for dinner. No matter what, Kakashi was family and family ate dinner together. Obito would pick on Kakashi for it often. The sound of the door opening and closing after 2 sets of feet entered only to stop outside the divider was the only alert they got that the Sandaime was back and Kakashi was with him. The seals for chakra blockers was still up, so no one could sense anything within or out of this special room. Now Inu, report your day following Naruto around briefly, then I will show you why I had brought you here. said the Sandame casually. Yes, Hokage-sama. Once I met up with Naruto, we went to his class, where upon seeing me the teacher Shibi grabbed the boy and shoved him into the corner. Shibi apologized for any problems Naruto had caused. I explained that I was there on your order to make sure Naruto stayed in class and any trouble he made was reported to you. This seemed to please Shibi. Throughout the day, Shibi would make sure that anyone else would be blamed on Naruto. All I said was, noted, and allowed the class to continue. Naruto got his turn to unlock his chakra. It was impressive enough to scorch the ground where he stood with the large amount he called forth. Said Kakashi in a monotone voice, though when he made sure to note Shibi's reaction it sounded disgusted coming out of his mouth. Minato and Kushina smiled at the thought of Kakashi unhappy with Naruto's treatment. He sounded. The report continued about how 2 genjutsu found on Naruto's paperwork. After class, Shibi asked Naruto to stay for extra help and asked if the Anbu was staying. When Inu stated no and pretended to leave, he watched as these extra lessons become nothing more than an excuse for beating the poor kid. Flashes of past times Kakashi guarded Naruto came to mind. The drunks, angry civilians, and even the orphanage caretakers. All of them made Kakashi sick. How could they not notice the blonde hair and blue eyes of their hero, the Yondaime Hokage, staring them in the face with nothing but loneliness and fear? If it wasn't for the council forbidding Kakashi for interaction with Naruto, he would have adopted him. Kakashi went on about the rest of the day, which was Naruto going to training field 50 that was abandoned long ago and was overgrown. How Naruto kept trying to do the katas for the academy style but seemed to have a problem with them. Kakashi admitted to grabbing the book when the boy fell asleep for a short nap after getting frustrated and noticed that all the katas in Naruto's book were wrong. It was all the illustrations for what not to do put together and smudged. On top of that, the words weren't legible and what was looked like it belonged to the Decipher team. Inu went through Naruto's backpack and saw all of his books were like this. The report ended with a promise of a detailed written report. Sarutobi nodded his head, though he did not look happy at all with this news. I believe you are wondering about why I brought you here instead of receiving your report. I have someone I would like you to meet, and because of the security issues I had brought us here with the seal I had handed you. You are to keep this information until it is announced publicly. Sarutobi said, placing a hand on Kakashi's shoulder and removed the Anbu mask. I will tell you now, I have lied to everyone. This is not a genjutsu. You and Naruto-kun the most, but I am happy to share with you and later when it is safe, Naruto. The curtain was pulled back. Two-faced with smiles and watery eyes peered at Kakashi with such love that the young man fell to his knees, his one eye wide and unbelieving. Minimum. Auto-sensei, whispered out Kakashi from where he had fallen on his knees, pain evident in his voice. Minato swung his feet over the bed after motioning for Kushina to stay on the bed and for Jiro to help him. Jiro helped Minato stand and balance. Slowly Minato walked over to his little brother figure. Oh little silver pup, it's okay, we really are here and everything will be okay. Minato got close to the young man. With Jiro's help he got to his knees and pulled Kakashi into a hug. That was all it took. Kakashi grabbed Minato fiercely and buried his head in the man's chest. Whimpers could be heard as he fought the need to cry, but with a few soft strokes on his back and soft words and it all came out. The pain, fear and sorrow, all of it, they sat like that for a while, time passing unnoticed. Minato softly explained to Kakashi why he and Kushina, who was crying too, were alive once the cries started to die down. Once Kakashi was calm and the story caught up, they separated and Jiro helped Minato. Kakashi noticed the struggle and helped as well. Once at the bed, Minato sat back down as Jiro ran his hands over Minato's legs to help uncramp his legs from sitting on them for so long. While Jiro was doing that, Kushina shimmied over and grabbed Kakashi, who laughed and hugged her back. Kushina tugged Kakashi to come lay on the bed with them while they talked. He complied after removing his sandals and Minato returned to lying in bed once Jiro was done. They talked for a while, hugging from time to time or laughing. Eventually Izumi came back. The great part of living in a ninja village was all stores had long hours daily, only a few stores were made 24 hours though. Izumi came in and saw a silver-haired man lying with the two patients. She went to Jiro and the two started unloading the items within the scroll. A fridge was pulled out and moved by them to be plugged in, and the portable grill was placed on an adjustable height table so Kushina could work without having to stress her back out and even work from the bed. Minato and Kushina explained what they were planning to do with getting Naruto fed and protected. What Minato had planned for Shibi and others, mostly general populace of Konoha. How they were gonna be reunited with Naruto and why they were going to wait for a while yet. Kushina started cooking the meals Kakashi was gonna be giving Naruto, starting from breakfast and ending with a small snack. Due to the special diet they, Minato and Kushina, required and were strictly monitored, though she made Kakashi dinner and finished Naruto's meals. Once she had Izumi seal it, Kushina rejoined the boys in relaxing and noticed Kakashi falling asleep, so she ran her hands through his hair as Izumi brought a blanket over and covered him with it. Before long everyone was heading either their home or, in Jiro's case, down the hall to a small cot made up for the doctor on standby. All in all, the day had gone fairly well and the future was looking bright. Hiruzen no longer had to fear Kakashi going off the deep end and knew Naruto would be cared for at a distance by his parents. Now to start getting the council under control. It was around 3 a.m. just for an idea of the time. The moon was lowering and very little was noticeable, commotion-wise, was made even here in the hidden village of the Leaf. The time was 3:38 a.m. and within the shadow was a small figure dashing between shadows, praying to make it to the goal. A few minutes later you would see a poorly kept park come into view as the shadow made a mad dash for the playground. Past the broken swings and snapped seesaw into the overgrown grass and brush. Finally, the small figure stopped and carefully pulled brush from a half-trunk to reveal a small basket with blankets in and over it. The small blanket moved lightly and a small noise was heard. "Hey kitty, sorry about not coming earlier," said Naruto as he removed the blanket and picked up one of the small bowls, then started cleaning one, then grabbed the other to clean it as well. "Hokage Gigi assigned an ANBU that guarded me all day, like all the other times I had problems. Though I kind of know this one, I remember seeing him often when I was in danger. I remember seeing him from the attic window when in the orphanage. I also remember getting bits of chocolate after being attacked. He was a bit cold today, but I think Gigi may have ordered him to pretend not to like me." Naruto filled one bowl with water from a bottle he pulled out of his clothes along with a crumpled paper that smelled bad. After replacing the water bowl in the basket, Naruto opened the smelly paper and revealed a small fish. He reached into his right shoe and pulled out a rusty kuni and started cleaning the fish and ripping it apart and putting it in the other bowl. Once the food bowl was in the basket, Naruto picked up the sole occupant of the basket. One small pure black kitten, with emerald eyes, only 8 weeks old by the looks of it. One rear leg and one front leg had sticks and cloth wrapped around them. In a splint-like manner. The tummy had a small bandage on it too, with a brown area on the right side. "Let's change these and wash you a bit to make sure you don't get sick," Naruto said to the protesting kitten, reaching into the food bowl and giving a piece to the kitten, who ate it while growling possessively, making Naruto laugh as he checked the splint's placement was still firm. Naruto noticed that the kitten seemed to be a bit stiff. Once was sure they were okay, he moved to the one on the tummy and checked it, lightly wetting the spot that was brown to loosen the spot so not to hurt the kitten when taking it off. It was still tough to get off the fur that was slightly matted, and the kitten cried out at it in protest. Inspecting the spot, he had to wash the kitten and not get its injured legs wet, while also making sure to fully support the body so not to strain the cut. It was currently not bleeding after 3 days of bleeding. Naruto smiled and dried the kitten gently, then took out new bandages he was able to get from Nurse Izumi, after their lunch, to give him again. Naruto sat back against the stump and pulled the piece of blanket that had covered the kitten before to recover the small animal. There he sat stroking the kitten and eventually nodding off. Later that morning, Kakashi's day started out great. First was waking up in a warm bed was confusing at first, but then was awesome when he remembered why and who was there with him. It was so odd, he was 14 the last time he saw his big brother and sister figures. He took the scroll with the food and put it in his rump pack with a little orange book, checked his uniform and mask. After another hug to the both of them, he left in the same manner as he had arrived. He went to Naruto's apartment and knocked. He had spoken with Kushina and Minato about Naruto. They would like him to start getting a better idea of what Naruto's schooling average would be. Minato thought it was odd that Naruto didn't seem to ever read or write, only draw, the 2 or 3 times they were able to watch him during school hours. When Kakashi thought of it, the only time Naruto did pick up a pencil it was to draw. Minato also said to collect the drawings because he couldn't see them well, but something that he saw made him ecstatic. Even Kushina wasn't sure what Minato had seen. Kakashi knocked again and this time tried to listen for any sounds coming from within the apartment. There were none to be found, so Kakashi picked the lock, making it look like he had a hard time with the key, and entered the apartment. It was messy just like last night. Clothes everywhere on the floor and even on the few pieces of furniture. Trash from eaten food was amongst the clutter, a faint odor of pee and sweat wafted from everywhere. The walls looked like someone had painted words on the wall and someone had tried to clean it off. It was everywhere on the walls and some on the floor, it was even on the furniture somewhat. The furniture itself was in poor condition, tears here and odd stains with the clean paint marks as well. Looking in each of the rooms, Kakashi was a bit sad with what he saw. Even he in his most depressed state had better living conditions than this. Upon looking more at the building itself, he knew there had to be a pipe leaking somewhere in the walls. Floorboards were loose in areas and posters covered holes in the wall, though there was only 4 of those. Biting his thumb, he went through a number of hand seals. Summoning jutsu. A puff of smoke appeared along with a pug. Pakun, I need you to help me locate the child that owns this apartment. He must have gone somewhere to train or something, said Kakashi. The small pug grumbled and took a sniff at the air, then his eyes widened. Inu, why do you smell of 2 people you said were dead? Said Pakun, who turned fully to his summoner, remembering to call him his Anbu name when he was dressed in that uniform. Not now, it's not safe to speak of it, I'll show you and the others later. Now can you lead me to Naruto-kun please? Asked Kakashi, waving his hand in front of his masked face in a not now motion. Pakun nodded and walked up to the door, which Kakashi opened for him, then locked and followed him back out the building. They jogged down through the village's light traffic that parted ways when they saw an Anbu and his dog coming through. They went into the poorer section of the village, 15 minutes from Naruto's apartment, straight into a rundown park. They slowed down to a walk and looked around. Pakun's nose twitched as he walked over to a grouping of shrub that looked as if someone either fell in it recently or as if someone had tried crushing it. Kakashi made a wait hand motion and moved to the shrub, pushing it aside. There lay Naruto with a small blanket covering his chest. Coming closer, he noticed the small blanket had a small lump in it and a tiny black head coming out from under it. Kakashi smiled behind his mask and reached out to pet the kitten and gently bumped Naruto's hand in order to wake him. Naruto was slow to awaken, slowly sitting up, holding the kitten still, and cutely rubbed his eye with the back of his hand, smacking his lips as to wet his lips and mouth. Naruto looked up and noticed the figure in front of him and jumped a bit, falling back with a squawk. The poor kitten was saved from the fall by Kakashi grabbing in the blanket and its bundle within. Kakashi took a few minutes to inspect the kitten in his hands by removing it from the blanket. To say he was impressed with the bandaging was an understatement. It was good for a field dressing, but the kitten needed real treatment by the looks of it. It wasn't moving right and a faint odor of illness reaching his nose. What happened to this little guy? After having checked the gender of the cat, who squeaked at him, it looks well cared for, but how did he get hurt? Said Kakashi, putting the kitten in the basket. He saw food and water with more blankets for bedding in it and pulled the basket closer to him. Some bullies saw him and were throwing him around. His stomach got cut on the edge of the trash can that was broken. They said they were gonna kill it because black cats are bad and evil animals. So, I decked them and drove them off, then took care of the kitten. I can't afford a vet and no one would help me anyway, so I did what I've seen doctors do for humans, though when I asked Izumi-sensei she said human medicine makes animals sick, so I just been cleaning him with water and new bandage I get from the school ward," said Naruto, reaching out to stroking the kitten, looking worried. The kitten wasn't moving much, only the small rise and fall of its chest showed it was alive. "He hasn't been moving much or eating much. I'm worried about him. Do you think if I took him to Gigi he'd get the kitten treated?" asked Naruto. "I can do one better. Let's go to one of my favorite vet offices and have him looked over. I'll pay for it. Can you keep him in your apartment? If not, I think I know a good home for him," said Kakashi, picking up the basket. Pakun did not look pleased with the kitten, but Kakashi knew he didn't need to worry about his dogs around cats. He knew they would be late to school, but he knew Naruto would worry and possibly skip school if the kitten was as sick as he was saying. "I can't have animals in my apartment. Can you really find him a nice home? Do you think they'd let me visit?" asked Naruto, sad he'd be losing his little furry friend while leaving the park to go to the place Inu knew. Pakun led the way, having not spoken to Naruto or even paid any attention to him or the kitten. It wasn't that Pakun didn't like Naruto, it was just that he tried not to unless Kakashi was dressed as a Junin. They walked for a while over to where a couple of clans had lands ran into large grass or forest areas. Aburame, Nara, and Inuzuka were to name a few clans. They were on the west outer area of Konoha. They were built so the mountain was a natural wall against enemies, yet leave them open and wade areas. The three large clans in a way shared the forest. Nara guarded their deer with the help of Inuzuka, who often run through the woods picking up scents and keeping bad or dangerous animals at bay by marking the area. Even going so far as to help in medical support with the Nara for the deer. Aburame's bugs helped keep the flora healthy and bad bugs away from the deer. It worked for all parties to share the large area and work together, then not to end fight. Yes, the Inuzuka were a bit wild, but they were very loyal to friends and family. Everyone in the village was basically a small part of the pack in their opinion, shinobi or villager. As long as they were loyal to the home and Hokage, they would be protected. Kakashi knew no matter who brought them a pet, they would care of it. Even better yet, Tsume liked Naruto. After a few years and nothing happening, she believed that the Yondaime did a good job. After Naruto found out how to prank, it was even intriguing and funny to hear tales of the child. If only the smell of the fox wasn't so strong on the kid, she could have taken him in, but she was afraid some of the wilder members of her pack might have attacked the poor kid. It was the main reason she didn't offer to adopt the Naruto. Most dogs would think they had a fox and try to hunt him at every chance possible. Also, she didn't want her dogs getting used to the scent would make them ignore a real one's scent if they got confused on the matter and not attack it. Tsume had confined this to the Hokage after that meeting 7 years ago in his office though, and had offered to help where she could. Mostly by keeping her clan from attacking Naruto. They were getting close to the clan now and only a few barks and howls were heard as they got closer. It was like they were going crazy. Naruto got nervous and scooted closer to Inu, even going as far as grabbing the side of his chest armor. Dogs always made Naruto nervous. Pakun had kept ahead of them and didn't bark or growl at him, so he wasn't scared of the pug, yet. The noise coming from the area they were heading was nerve-wracking to say the least. It reminded him of the one time on his birthday. He shuddered and shook his head, ridding himself of the bad memories. They walked up to a door and knocked. Barking could be heard along with someone yelling loudly at the dogs. 3 large bangs were heard as something big hit the door Kakashi had knocked on. Naruto stood wide-eyed, seeing 3 huge dog heads jumping up and down in front of the door. A girl that reminded him of that jerk Kiba came and grabbed the 3 dogs and ordered them to heel, which they did. Then she opened the door. Only to be surprised to see a blonde kid and an Anbu staring at her. "Mom, it's an Anbu and some kid," the young girl yelled from the door, motioning them in. Kakashi came in, Naruto close behind, eyeing the dogs but bravely walking past them. Pakun stopped by the dogs and stayed there. Once inside, they saw a medical table and many different walls covered by closets full of medical supplies with locks on them. Kakashi set the basket on the table with the kitten as Tsume walked in, whipping her hands on a towel she throws away in a waste basket. Hana finished changing and checking the last 5 cages on the right side, and don't forget to make sure your brother is ready for school and out the door, then go to your team training. Now what can I do for you two today? Aren't you supposed to be in class, Naruto? Tsume asked, looking at Naruto, who was surprised, as she pulled the kitten out of the basket. What happened to this little guy? She asked, and Naruto told her the same story as he had Inu. She smiled and patted Naruto's head, then continued looking over the kitten. Well, you did a good job, pup, just tetanus and a few broken bones here. The tetanus is getting bad, but thankfully you brought him in on time, he can be treated. I'd say this little guy's is about 8 weeks old. Are either of you keeping him? Tsume asked, gathering the items she'd need to treat the kitten. She saw the boys shake their heads no to keeping the kitten. It was slowly stiffing from the tetanus, so eating must have been hard for it, and she explained this to the young worried boy that gently rubbed one figure on the kitten's head while she was getting the items to treat the kitten. She first cut off all the bandages and looked over the limbs, then she shaved down the small fluff of fur even going around the cut the cat had. She dabbed some disinfectant on the wound, then wiped it down, then she pinched the skin together and put a clear liquid across it. Naruto was amazed that the skin stayed shut afterwards. Tsume explained everything she was doing as Naruto watched. Inu had stepped back and watched as the kid enjoyed the one-on-one attention he was receiving from the clan head. At first Naruto was nervous to ask questions, but eventually got used to it as he noticed she wasn't mad at him for it. She even allowed him to help after she showed him how to do something. Naruto even used a dropper to give the kitten some water every once in a while. It was cute to say the least. Kakashi pulled out a small camera and took a few pictures, without them noticing, for his parents. After about an hour and a half, the kitten was looking better and had 2 small casts on its legs. The fur was softly washed, dried, and brushed gently by Naruto, and then gently put on a clean blanket with a small IV running into its unbroken foreleg and a cone on its tiny head. Naruto sat by it, running one figure over its head, as Tsume walked over to Inu and motioned him out of the room. So what's the plan for that little critter? It will be allowed to go to a new home in 2 weeks, but Naruto said he can't keep it. She said, looking back into the other room, I don't want to separate the kid from his furry pal there. Naruto seems already to have an attachment to the kitten. I've seen the kid after school a few times and he's usually alone. Having a furry friend would be nice for the kid. Even Kiba says no one really hangs out with him, though Kiba says sometimes he and the Nara and Akamichi boys will follow him out of the class, sometimes hanging out after that, but not really friends. Tsume said, remembering the one time she was called in about her son leaving the class. Inu sighed to himself and confirmed this to the clan head. I have a plan for him to see the kitten after a bit, but first I got to talk to the people about Naruto and the kitten. Said Inu said, pulling out a scroll from his rear pack. Naruto hasn't eaten yet. Do you mind if I set him up with his food before I take him to school? That way he can hang out with the kitten. And just so you know, Naruto will more than likely want to come by and see the kitten for the 2 weeks it will be here. Will that be okay? Inu asked. Tsume nodded her head to him about both things as he brought them up. Inu walked back into the room, unrolled the scroll and pushed a little chakra into the seal, and out popped a spread of 4 toast with light butter, some jelly to the side in a small dish, 6 sunny side up eggs on a plate with scrapple, hashed potatoes and crispy bacon. To the side was a peeled orange and cut up apple with a small carton of milk and orange juice. Naruto's eyes just about bugged out at the sight, mouth drooling. Inu set everything in front of Naruto and put silverware out as well. Eat what you can, Naruto. Someone has made you 3 meals and some snacks for the day. They will meet you at a later date, and yes, the food is safe, no need to worry. Inu said as Naruto poked at it, making sure it was okay. The young boy nodded and picked up his chopsticks, said, thank you for the food, like his Gigi taught him, and dug in. Manners, Kakashi noted. Naruto would need to be taught them. The list of things was growing on what Naruto needed to be taught. Minato and Kushina disliked that Naruto was so far behind other children, even the others in the orphanages. This just showed Kakashi again how much fear can get people make poor choices. Naruto finished his food in record time, only needing 45 minutes to eat the entire thing. The plate even looked licked clean. Naruto was patting his belly happily while finishing the milk carton off, having already finished the orange juice. Kakashi was surprised at how much this kid could eat, though he probably shouldn't have. Kushina could pack it away, and it seems her son could as well. Poor Minato-sensei will have one hell of a food bill as Naruto grows. Young boys already eat a lot growing up, but an Uzumaki boy must eat 3 times that amount. Kushina said it had to do with their denser chakra in order to use their ability depending on which line of Uzumaki they come from. Healing, defense, and offenses abilities were 3 classes of abilities listed, though the main family could do all 3, though usually chose one to focus on. Kushina was a rare mix of offense and defense with her chains, though they lean more to defense since they absorbed chakra and made barriers. Another thing to mention to the couple is a possibility of Naruto having Kushina's Keki Genkai, which was good since the Uzumaki were almost extinct due to the destruction of Uzushiogakure in the Second War, but that was tale for another time. It was time now for Naruto to go to school. Let's go Naruto, the kitten will be here for 2 weeks recovering, and Sum said you may come see him during that time. I will speak with the people that might give the cat a good home later tonight and let you and Sum know if it's a go. Inu said, putting a hand on Naruto's shoulder and steering the boy away. Sum gathered the kitten off the table and carried him to the back to put in one of the many kennels. Scene break. The walk to the school was quiet. Naruto had missed 1.5 classes by this point, and history was about to being in 15 minutes by Kakashi's remembrance of the schedule. Naruto went in first and the teacher started to yell until he noticed the Anbu Inu behind the boy. Ah, Anbu-san, did this rift rat cause trouble again today? Does the Hokage want him held after school? Asked the teacher with a bit of glee in his eyes but not his face. No, there was an emergency this morning that had to be addressed before we were able to come. I will collect his homework that was missed this morning and ensure that it is completed for tomorrow's had-in. Inu said, and the teacher nodded his head, motioning Naruto in. Naruto went to his seat and Inu went to the back of the class and took out a stood-in parade rest. Kakashi was itching to read his book, but it wouldn't be good to read that in a school setting, nor would it be good to represent the Anbu in that manner. If he was in his Junin uniform, then he wouldn't have cared either way, but Anbu were seen as the shadow of the Hokage, so he couldn't do that. The day went on and Kakashi noted how Naruto never touched any of his books other than to take them out of his desk. Naruto would draw or just about fall asleep in class. The day wore on and Kakashi couldn't believe all the stuff that was skipped. Konoha was missing the clans that also helped in the building of the village hidden in the leaf, like how the Uzumaki financed the building materials and helped protect the village before the daimyo even got involved with the village. The Uzumaki also played mediators for the agreement of the clans, mostly between Senju and Uchiha. The class even coved the first Hokage and how great he was. Of course, Naruto had to have his say about that, and Inu had to intervene and calm the boy down and allow the class to continue, while taking mental notes of all the feed bull the teacher was covering in class. Once Inu would notice that Naruto was done with a drawing, he would take the paper and stash it. Naruto had asked why he was doing that, and he said that he wanted artwork for the Anbu fridge. Naruto was happy with that answer. Inu was looking at one when the teacher handed out pop quizzes and noticed something. It was rough, but he could make out some fuinjutsu within the drawing, but some things he didn't recognize, but not written language. It looked like a bunch of shapes interlocked unless you knew what you were looking for. That must have been what Minato-sensei was talking about. He pocketed it and went and looked over the students around him, and their test most were done, but when he looked at Naruto he noticed that there was a genjutsu on most of the test. But the worst part was that Naruto only had his name on it, only that, and even then, his last name was spelled wrong and the writing sloppy. Like he wasn't used to writing actual words or was unsure and made it mess to seem like it was just slopped and not wrong. He picked that paper up too when the teacher started to collect the pop quizzes, and asked for Naruto's test from Inu. The teacher was not happy when he was denied and told Inu that Naruto would receive a 0 for the quiz then. The Hokage will be with you about the quiz once he gets done speaking with my charge Chunin Shibi. Naruto, please come with me now. Inu said as he started walking down the steps towards the door, stopping to pick up Naruto's books from his desk as sealing them away. Naruto hung his head thinking he was in trouble for the test. The teacher of course followed and tried to make Inu give him the paper again, along with the books, but Inu kept refusing. Shibi got so desperate he lunged at the Anbu and was face planted into the floor by Inu. Before he knew what happened, the students were shocked and the assistant came up to try and help Shibi. Naruto was a bit shocked but then was asking Inu to show him how to do that. Inu ignored Naruto for the moment. I do believe this class is done for the day. Inu says aloud as another two Anbu appeared and Inu motioned for Shibi to be taken along with the assistant. Inu stood up as Dove grabbed Shibi and restrained him, and Squirrel grabbed the assistant and both Sun shinned out to Anbu holding cells until orders were given out about them. Inu turned to the class. Until your homes receive notice your classes will be cancelled, you may leave once we are gone. Inu said as he put his hand on Naruto's shoulder as the kid kept begging for Inu to show him that move. Even going as far as to use his baby blue eyes on Inu, to which he gave into. Inu said he would later if Naruto behaved until the weekend. Naruto cheered as they left to go see the Hokage. The class cheered in the background and started leaving to go where they wanted. Half hour before noon, Hokage's office. The secretary to the Hokage's office was gone and a chunin that Kakashi knew was in her place. It was Yumino Iruka who last mission Kakashi went on as a junin on one of his down times from Anbu. Iruka had a hard time and asked the Hokage to be reassigned as a teacher, but for the moment he was in classes on how to teach and deal with students both civilian and clan type. Getting his certifications was taking time, and while it was in the works he would work in the offices to make money. Iruka was almost done. From what Kakashi heard, Iruka would work from time to time as an assistant teacher to earn credits and for an evaluation of what he learned. Inu-san, the Hokage said, if you or Uzumaki showed I was to let him know. Give me 1 minute and I'll see if he's done with the elders yet. Iruka said, looking wary of Naruto but not hateful. Naruto noticed the look and looked away, biting his lip a bit. Then he turned his back on the chunin and put his hands behind his head and smiled as Iruka got up and went to check with the Hokage. After a few minutes, two grumpy elders came out and stuck their nose up at the sight of Naruto, then marched off grumbling. Iruka came back rubbing the back of his head and told them to go in. Naruto turned around with the big smile still on his face and ran to the Hokage's office after waving at Iruka. Inu nodded and followed his charge to the Hokage's office. Once he got there he heard Naruto regaling the Hokage with what happened in class between Inu and Shibi. The Hokage had his pipe in his mouth, smiling, and was nodding to Naruto's story while the boy imitated Inu's move. The Hokage asked if he knew why his Anbu guard did that or not, and the boy paused only to shake his head no. The Hokage saw Inu and called Bear out of his guard position. Bear was a large man, very well built. He couldn't use stealth like some of the sleeker Anbu, but he was a powerhouse on the field. He was mostly put of field when they knew they need heavy hitters rather than recon missions. Bear received instructions to take Naruto to the Hokage's meditation room and go over the academy katas. The room was built by the Shodai after he nearly lost his temper, almost killing several people, politicians mostly, when he was overstressed by them. It became the one room that any Hokage could use, and no one was allowed to bother the Hokage in there, and had seals from Lady Mito to ensure the room stayed quiet. Anbu would still guard, but they were not allowed to bother the Hokage unless it was an emergency. The Anbu would bring him whatever was requested and then disappear. They would only bother him if someone requested him, and if asked would explain why and to return to said person with the Hokage's response unless the Hokage left to do so himself. Naruto had spent time in there before and was allowed to enter as he pleased since the Hokage enjoyed his time with Naruto often. The boy was one of the Sandame's favorite people and most entertaining, though if Naruto was brought in after a prank, the only thing told to the Hokage was the prank, and the boy dropped on the floor either tied or with him laughing his butt off at the situation. He would tell the Hokage the tale with such happiness that would uplift the Hokage's spirit and receive a light warning or punishment. Now with Naruto contained, the Hokage turned to Inu and asked for a report. Inu informed the Sandaime about the day and how poor the class-required information was provided, also how Naruto interacted during class, with students and staff as well. Inu unsealed the books and pulled out the pop quiz. The Hokage frowned looking at the quiz with a Class A genjutsu on it and then pulled the books to himself. He opened the books and got angry. He repeated this with all of the books, 10 in total, each making him even madder. What is this supposed to be? Did you really pull this straight from Naruto-kun's desk? Asked the Hokage in a harsh whisper. Inu nodded and picked up one of the books to see why the Hokage was mad. The Hokage picked up a piece of paper and wrote a note, then made a storage seal, then sealed all that Inu had brought to him. He then handed it to Inu and told him to go speak with their neutral friends and then cleaned out his pipe to refill it. Inu left and Hiruzen lit his pipe only to hear a commotion outside his room. Shouts from the Chunin Uruka and a few bangs here and there. His other two Anbu shifted slightly but stayed hidden in order to protect the Hokage. Hiruzen stood up and stretched his senses out and recognized Tsunade's chakra signature and waved off the Anbu from defensive positions. He also noted Jiraiya's coming over the rooftops outside and jumping to enter from the window. Hiruzen knew that Minato sent both letters and everything, but never have they shown up at the same time like this, nor in such a loud, quick manner. Sarutobi Hiruzen! Came a fierce yell. Hiruzen flinched. From in front of the office door that flew off its hinges moments later. You had better not have said anything to that slimy frog. Senju Tsunade bellowed after making Hiruzen duck for cover. The Sandaime poked his head out from behind his desk and looked at the shards of wood that was 8 inches thick and had metal plate in the middle of it. The metal was indented and thrown into the wall on either side of the desk while the thick wood around it was destroyed. Jiraiya was heard yelping just outside the window that had been shattered after he had just opened it. Ah, Tsunade Hime, what has you so upset? Asked the Hokage, and Tsunade showed him the letter that was sent. Her fist was clenched and shaking in fury that was just barely contained. Tsunade, I need you to return immediately. There is an important matter that requires yours and Jiraiya's attention. If you do not return, I will tell Jiraiya everything you have kept from him and announce it to the public as well. You have 1 week to be back, if not then everything comes to light, and you will be announced as a missing nin. Signed the Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Hiruzen's sweat dripped at this, wondering how he was gonna get out of this one. He turned to his other student that had finally managed to enter the room and was trying not to incur his teammates' wrath but looked just as mad as Tsunade coming in. If the KI was a telltale sign of anything. Jiraiya-kun, may I see your letter please? Asked Hiruzen, to which he received an angry nod and a mumble of his godson better be safe. Hiruzen could feel the killing intent coming from both of his students and could not decide which one was worse with it. Jiraiya, you are needed here ASAP. The council has found a way to have Naruto-kun put to death and I cannot stop them. Drop everything and come here immediately. I can probably stall them for a week at most. ABSALUTLY, no research trips. We have no time for it. Hiruzen Sarutobi. What were you thinking, Minato? They might just kill me for these false letters. Got to think fast. Thought Hiruzen, trying to figure out how to keep his two students from trying to kill him or the council members. As if on cue, Naruto burst out of his meditation room and then froze, feeling the killing intent. Hiruzen thanks any god that could hear him. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade turned their heads at the boy's entrance only to see him pale and fall to his knees, gasping for breath while shaking. Tsunade gasped and the key dropped right off as she reached for the side of the desk to steady herself. Jiraiya went over to the boy and picked him up, checking him over. Naruto squawked at being picked up suddenly. Who is this boy, sensei? Asked Tsunade with a shaky voice. She couldn't remove her eyes from him. It was like looking at a ghost. Pictures in her scrapbook from the past that she gave up being around came to haunt her. Her dead son was standing in front of her again. The pictures Sarutobi had taken by the caretakers of the orphanage and later, ones she sneaked by with from the academy to when her son achieved Hokage status up until his and his wife's death, and supposedly their son's death. This ball of sunshine is Uzumaki Naruto, but neither he nor I were really the ones who wrote to you, though I did send them out. Naruto-kun, why don't you go to Ichiraku's and have all you can eat on me? Take this letter to him and he will bill me later, okay? Naruto wiggled his way from Jiraiya's arms and ran to get the note from the Hokage while giving him a hug, then yelling his pleasure at being able to eat until he dropped. He was gone so fast all that was left was a trail of dust and protesting office workers. Is that wise? What about the council sensei? Asked a worried Jiraiya, to which Tsunade asked why and was shown what his letter held. She got mad all over again. Jiraiya backed up just in case Tsunade wanted to take her unexplained anger out on him. He really didn't want to ask her why she was angry. You had better have an explanation as to why that child looks like him, and if he is that child that I was told died, then there better be a good reason for why I was lied to. She thundered loudly. Now Jiraiya was really confused. What did Tsunade want with the son of his deceased student? And who was him? Naruto didn't look like Dan, but maybe a bit like Naoki though. The Sandaime gulped, knowing that if he couldn't leave the office unattended yet, it was just about noon. If only he could be in two places at once, only then would he have a chance of sliding the wrath off of himself and maybe redirect it at Minato or even Danzo. Then a thought struck him, and the next thing anyone knew, he was bashing his head against the desk he was still near. Thump, stupid, thump, stupid, thump, stupid, cried the Sandaime Hokage. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya grew concerned at this but backed up when their sensei jumped up and made a seal, then puff, 4-Kage Bunchi appeared. Sarutobi started yelling out different orders to each of them, then went to his desk and pulled out a small orange book and pocketed it with a gleeful smile. To put the metal doors back up once they were sure it was straight enough to work, as the rest talked the paperwork which the two fixing the door were done went to help them. Turning to his two students, he waved them on and walked out the window, while tell the Anbu to stay. Needless to say, the Anbu sweat dripped and pretended that none of this happened and followed the Hokage's orders and stayed where they were. Iruka knocked on the now metal door after a few minutes and crept in when told to enter. He had an ice pack on his right side of his face and was limping a bit. Once fully in, he was shocked to see 4 Hokages. After talking to the Hokage and apologizing for allowing the woman to enter, and asked about her. Upon hearing that it was Tsunade Senju, Iruka gulped. I thought she was an older woman, not a 20-year-old looking lady like that. Iruka said softly, just about fainting after hearing he was almost killed. If Tsunade hadn't held back on that punch, he would have been dead. The Hokage sitting in the main seat chuckled and told Iruka to leave for the rest of day and go to the hospital to get treated, motioning to an Anbu to help Iruka. Kat stepped forward to help him out into the hospital, after shutting the Hokage's door for the clones to get back to work. Little after noon, sector protection. Minato was sweating bullets, and it wasn't because he was worried about the small prank he pulled on the Sandaime Hokage. No, it was his mother, the one person he has been wanting to let know that he knew and wanted to be around her but wasn't really sure how she would react. Every orphan dreamed of finding their parents and having a happy family. Many grew out of that stage eventually, even Minato. At one point Minato stopped looking, but once he got together with Kushina his mind returned to that one thought. So once he had time, after the war ended, he returned to his search only to find a file in the Hokage, only files he could look at. To say he was shocked would have been an understatement. He went home early that day and threw a tantrum of sadness and grief. His mother was right there this whole time, and never once did she show any care. Kushina was even angrier than him. It ended up with him holding her, while he just allowed his frustration at the situation out as he held her. They talked long into the night and most of the morning. Kushina even went to the office with him, and when no one was permitted to be around, they would continue where they left off if interrupted. When the Sandaime came in, Kushina shut and locked the door, only then did everything come out. Tsunade did keep tabs on Minato even now. She had just sent Hiruzen to check on him after hearing one of the office chunin say that it seemed their Hokage was quite upset in not seeing people. She had waited until lunch, and after not seeing Minato leave for lunch, she sought out Hiruzen to go and check on Minato. Hiruzen even admitted to having a picture book made since Minato was put in the orphanage. Hiruzen also admitted to seeing newborn baby pics in the book, pics from the academy, Mianto's graduation, and a few from Minato watching Kushina around from time to time. Hiruzen even admitted to taking some from the Chunin and Junin rank picks. Even coping a few from Jiraiya's training time with Minato. After hearing all this out of the retired Hokage, they sat in the office and thought it over. It was decided that they would not tell Tsunade about Minato knowing until Minato wanted to speak up. Minato was hoping to have Tsunade introduced to her grandson and welcome her back into the family once again, but that night that was supposed to be the greatest of the days of their lives turned out so horribly. Minato was so stressed he didn't notice Kushina trying to calm him down. Even Inu was not sure what to do. He had never seen his big brother like this and he didn't know why. All he knew was Lady Tsunade and Lord Jiraiya were coming down with the Sandaime. Kakashi knew Jiraiya would be happy to see Minato back, so Minato-sensei's reaction was puzzling to say the least. Min dear, calm down, just think of how happy we'll be when we're reunited with Naruto soon. It will be the same here, just calm down. Deep breaths, Min-kun. Says Kushina soothingly, ignoring Kakashi's inquiring look. Minato took some deep breaths only to rush to the bathroom. Sounds of him puking reached their ears just as he disappeared. Now Kakashi was worried. Jiro walked over to the bathroom and was quietly asking Minato questions while trying to let the man have his moment to calm. After a few minutes, Jiro went in and shut the bathroom door, having a vague idea of why Minato was getting sick, so he decided to have a man-to-man talk with Minato, letting him know it was okay to freak out about letting everything out of the bag. Kakashi was trying to get the information out of Kushina, but all she would say was it was Minato's story to tell, not hers. Then she asked Kakashi to draw the curtain across so anyone coming in the door wouldn't see into the main part of the room. It could be pulled either straight across the room or around the bed depending on the need. Moments later, the Sandaime entered the room and was talking softly to his guest. Tsunade, Jiraiya, what I am about to show you has been hidden from all but a few until recently, and I assure you this is no genjutsu. I have been lying to everyone, even you. I'm afraid it was not out of malicious intentions that this was withheld, but more out of not wanting to give false hope to anyone nor endanger those it affected. Said Sarutobi, standing in front of the drawn curtain. He heard the bathroom door open and the sound of someone's walking the room to the bed. Once it sounded like everyone was settled and the curtain was starting to be pulled back, did the Sandaime walk to the far wall across from the bed. Minato had been returned to the bed and was lying flat on the bed with an arm slung over his face covering his eyes. Jiraiya was so shocked he didn't move or even make a sound, just stared at the two on the bed. Tsunade was no better. Kushina made a shush motion at the two, to which they nodded and didn't move after they finally collected themselves. Min dear, come on, speak to me. What is making you so upset that you got sick? You and I have already spoken about this. Your mother obviously loves you if she was willing to keep track of you since the day you were left in the orphanage. Kushina says, looking right at Tsunade, who was starting to shake. Are you having second thoughts on seeing if she would rejoin the family? And what of your father, Min? He should know he has a son, a wonderful son that he helped become the man you are now. She said, running her hands over his hair and every so often over this chest and stomach. No, I really do want my family to be whole. I want you, Naruto, my mom and dad. Even Hiruzen, which both you and Naruto think of as family, to be here in our lives. And I think you puked because of the richer food we started this morning in my nerves. Minato says, taking deep calming breaths every so often while talking. I'm just worried whether after all this time, if my mother would still even want me, let alone my father who never knew about me. I know I shouldn't let this get to me, but there is so much I want for this family, and I really am afraid she will turn me away, even hate me. You could hear the strain in Minato's voice as he spoke. Tsunade started to cry while covering her mouth and used her ninja skills, subconsciously, to walk quietly to the bed. Minato's chest was still taking heaving breathers as he tried to calm himself. By the time she reached him, reaching over, she yanked him up and wrapped him in her arms as she sat him in her lap, as she sat, holding him as she did when he was a babe, holding with one arm on his back and the other over the shoulder and hand on the back of his head, pressing him to her chest. No, my little Min, I do love you, but I couldn't put you in danger with being a senju. Our family is cursed. We were being killed off one by one and I could not risk you, not with the war getting worse then later Nawaki dying. I was afraid you would hate me after finding out that I had left you alone all these years. I'm so sorry, Minato. Tsunade said as tears streamed down her face. She crushed Minato's face into her massive bosom and buried her face into his golden locks. Minato was tense at first but then wrapped his arms around her while trying to get his face to her shoulder and failing. After a few he couldn't breath and tried to pull away from Tsunade's grip, which was steel in strength. Kushina ended up having to pry him from his mother's grip by yanking on Tsunade's hair and getting her attention. Ops, sorry Min, I forget my strength sometimes. Tsunade said, blushing. Minato's face was red due to lack of oxygen. After a few minutes he regained his breath and returned her hug in a gentler manner. He saw over Tsunade's shoulder that Jiraiya was scribbling like a madman in his little notebook and chuckled. Mom, I think you need to tell Dad about me, it's only fair. Minato said, pulling back to look at his mother in the eyes. She was cringing, or I can do it if you want. Tsunade nodded and Minato turned to his sensei. Jiraiya sensei, I'm really glad to see you again, but please put your perverted writing away for now. Sensei, years ago during the war you and your team almost died in an ambush. Both you and Orochimaru were hospitalized. You were released a week later on light duty and Orochimaru would be in there for a while yet. Mom was having a bad time accepting the fact that Orochimaru almost killed you or left you for dead. She was scared of him. You both went out drinking and got hammered. The next morning you woke to a bed thinking Mom dropped you there and left you, but really you both slept together, resulting in me. After she found out she was pregnant, she supposedly took a mission away from the team for 2 years and returned after I was a year old, then left me in the orphanage. Only your sensei Hiruzen and Nawaki knew about the whole ordeal. Any other details you will have to get from Mom. When me and Kushina knew about you being my dad, we wanted to make sure you were included in the family, thus making you a godfather to your own grandson was a perfect excuse. So, that's as much as I can say, said Minato in a bit of a fast-paced manner. Getting nervous as Jiraiya's head tilted down and his bangs covered his eyes, he walked up to the bed not saying anything. Tsunade removed Minato from her lap and looked at her teammate. She opened her mouth to speak only to have it forced shut as Jiraiya backhanded her across the face. I love you, Tsunade. But I am so angry right now. How dare you? How dare you keep the one thing I have always wanted away from me? Yelled Jiraiya, finally looking up. His face looked a cross between ultimate betrayal and anger. He turned on his heel and walked back out. I need some time to get my thoughts together and maybe pay my godson a visit. Was there any truth in that letter I was sent, or was it just to get me here? I'll see you later, son, said Jiraiya, tearing up but not crying yet, to Minato, who had a small frown on his face but nodded in understanding. No, Dad, I wrote it to get you here. Same for Mom, I was kind of pulling a prank on Sandaime-sama due to some things we can talk about later. Sorry, Dad, said Minato, looking like a kid caught in a cookie jar, rubbing the back of his head. Jiraiya walked over to Minato, ignoring Tsunade and hugging Minato, which was returned by Minato. I'll look out for my grandson, and don't you worry none. I may be angry now, but once your mother and I talk, everything should be worked out. Maybe not the way you would like, but at least taken care of so we can sort of be a family. Know this, I'm proud of you and love you as a son. I won't say anything to him about you until I have the full story from you and know what's going on, said Jiraiya, giving on last squeeze before he went to leave again. Sarutobi sensei, you and I need to have a talk later. You're not off the hook either. With that he left room, which had gone quiet. Kakashi was stunned by what he seen and heard. Never would he have guessed his sensei and brother figure was the son of 2 heroes and legends. Even more surprising was that Jiraiya was not in the know about being a father, but his reaction was even more of a shock. Never in a million years would he or anyone in this room believe that Jiraiya would ever lay his hands on Tsunade in that way, though none blamed him. Kakashi watched as Minato talked softly to his mother, who was crying in grief at what just happened. Maybe now she would give Jiraiya a chance he has always wanted. Minato talked with his mother for a while, Eventually they got into talking about Kushina needing surgery and hoping that she would perform the operation, which led to her admitting about her fear of blood. They spoke about it and were thinking about how to get around that. It got to the point that Tsunade said she would work her way back to the operating room by working in the hospital and turned to Jiro to discuss this matter. She said she would also up the chances of success by doing more research after having examined Kushina for herself. While it wasn't going to end Kushina's career as a kunoichi, but it would be a while until she would be allowed to perform her duty to the village. Minato said it was fine and asked if Kushina wouldn't mind being his secretary, which she didn't, for a while since he wanted the family to be together until Naruto graduated anyway. This just would work out for all involved. Of course it showed he was a pervert with the expression he had on his face, though at least it was toward his wife only when he perverted. All Kakashi could think was he hoped no one walked into anything and made a mental note never to touch anything in that office once Sensei was back, and to warn fellow Anbu. They stayed in that room talking for a while until it was late and arrangements were made for where everyone was to sleep or stay. Tsunade was about to leave and get a message out to Shizune about the new arrangements. She had left the poor girl in the dust getting here to shut Hiruzen up about Minato. Before she left, Minato held her back as both Inu and Hiruzen left, making plans to get Naruto's files and academy fixed for the students to return to class. Anbu would fill positions as normal teachers in order to see who was being falsely passed and what really was going on in the academy. Minato thought that the civilian council may have been taking liberties with the system, and the only way to fix that is to have some unknown Anbu act as underappreciated chunin that they think will bend to their will. Also, to see what else was taken out of the curriculum nowadays. Naruto would be fine since Jiraiya was going to hang out with him. Hiruzen would stop by his house to pick up something he has been trying to get done off and on for years now. A present he couldn't wait to complete for Minato and Kushina, and now that Tsunade and Jiraiya were back they might like it as well. He had to also get the pictures of Minato and Kushina he had taken every 6 months of their stay along with brief reviews of their health to Tsunade for her to put in her scrapbook. Their recovery would be something she would want to celebrate. Having the Cage Bunchy helping out in the office would now make time, and he planned to be in his meditation room for as long as it takes. With Minato and Tsunade. Jiro, would you mind if Mother and I used your room next door for a bit of privacy? I would like to speak to her alone if I could. Asked Minato, looking at the male doctor that was getting Kushina settled back into the bed correctly without agitating her back any after having been examined by Tsunade. Jiro nodded as he continued with his work. Minato waved off Tsunade's hand for help as he carefully got up and slowly walked to the door hidden in the back corner of the room that led to a small sleeping quarters and office that was there. Once there, Minato shut the door and handed Tsunade a slip of paper with Fuinjutsu written on the paper. After instructing her how to apply it and how much chakra to put into it, the room was sealed off from the other room. No one could hear what was about to be said. They sat down, Tsunade on the edge of the bed and Minato in the office chair. Minato looked his mother in the eye before he began. Look, Mom, I have something you need to hear and I want no interruptions from you. Minato makes sure that Tsunade was looking at him and waits for her nod to continue. As much as Jiraiya-sensei plays the perverted fool, I have to say that in all the time I spent being trained by him and later working with him, he never once slept with anyone. He would pretend to fall asleep after being drunk off his, and once the woman would either leave or fall asleep, he would get back up and either clean up or write. Yes, he would put his hands around their shoulder, but I never seen him grope anyone on purpose without having to pretend while really pickpocketing said person. I confronted him one time about this and you know what he said. He told me that only one woman was worth his real time, but he would never be good enough for her. He said, still looking at her, making sure she was listening. Her eyes were a bit misty looking, but he still had her attention. He said a lowly orphan with nothing to offer her was never gonna be good enough for her, and the most he could do was keep her safe and let her be herself. When I was older and in Anbu, he came to me so smashed drunk and asked me to end him. Do you want to know why? He asked. Tsunade shook her head no, but he continued. She was starting to cry, but he pushed through. It's because the love of his life was engaged to another man and was happy for her. But he was afraid that he was gonna ruin her happiness out of jealousy and anger. He wanted you to be happy and free. After he slept off the alcohol, he wasn't much better, and I was afraid for him. He left for just under 2 years after promising not to deliberately kill himself. He came running back when he heard the news of Dan being killed and made a week-and-a-half trip in 4 days only to comfort the woman and then collapse when she after went home to be alone for the day. He hadn't slept, eaten or anything for those 4 days because he knew she would need someone to help her. He always kept tabs on her and her well-being, even when I was a genin he was doing it. Minato was slowly getting loud but still not yelling yet. She was now sobbing. Minato wasn't gonna let up even though he knew this might destroy their relationship. He knew nothing would change for his poor father unless his mother knew the full truth. Now I want you to think really hard about how you are gonna talk to him about him being in this family. I will not allow Naruto to see the fights or separation in his family because you two cannot get along. I know Jiraiya will have no problems acting like a happy family for his grandson, but I don't want dad to have to force an act one believe after him being denied a chance to raise his own son. He should have been given a chance to have happiness. I won't be denying him a chance to be with his grandson. In reality, Jiraiya is more than deserving of having a great woman at his side. Only question is, are you deserving of a great guy like him? Minato got up and steeled himself against his mother's sobbing tears as she sank to the floor, as he slowly walked away. Then he ripped the seal off and left, shutting the door behind him. Minato leans back against the door, fearing he may have just damaged his relationship with his mother by speaking to her like that. His knees gave out on him and he sank to the floor as Jiro came over with a wheelchair and helped Minato up and into it. Jiro then wheeled him over to the bed which Kushina was laying in waiting for him. Once Minato was situated into the bed, he rolled over to his wife and held her tight and kept say thank you to her in whisper. Thanking her for her love, care and family, for being supportive of him and pushing him to get his family back, for having Naruto and continuing to live with him after all that had happened. Kushina whispered back to him her love and thanks as well, along with reassurances of things getting better in time. It was hours later before Tsunade came out of the room. Both Kushina and Minato were asleep, with Minato cuddled into Kushina's side since she could not move with her back. Tsunade came up to the bed and fixed the covers over the two, kissed Kushina's forehead, then walked around to Minato's side and sat down. Brushed his hair a few times before leaning over and kissing his cheek. Since his head was buried in Kushina's side, it was easiest to get. Minato mumbled something sounding like, "Mom," and smiled in his sleep. She smiled and went over to poor Jiro, who fell asleep in his chair, and put a blanket that was on the side table by him on him. Then left to go to the apartment Sarutobi-sensei told her to go to after handing her a key earlier. It was 1 a.m. at this point and she was beat and still needed to make that letter to Shizune with her summons help. She left the room, dimming the lights on the way out and making sure the security was in place as she left.